Oh, I thought it was okay. It did it anyways. All right, sorry about that. All right, welcome, shalom, shalom, peace, peace. I'm sorry. Apparently it wasn't even up. Hopefully everybody can come on. I apologize. I thought we had it up. It wasn't even posted anything. My fault. My bad. Hopefully all is well with everyone. Excuse me. I went to go get some water. Thought I had left something running for y'all. And apparently there's a whatever it recorded, it's just been playing that back over and over and over again. It did a story, not an actual, wasn't on the live session, so I'm sorry. Thought I had something for y'all. We got a little setup here where we can play some music and stuff. I thought that's what was going on. I didn't realize we were having all this other stuff go on. I apologize. It's apparently people move tents and stuff around, so there's some stuff that's a little closer. Prayerfully, you'll be able to hear me. Usually the rising, even though you'll hear the children running around in the rising, but usually the rising is a little more quiet. But hopefully you'll be able to hear me through. Give me a second. I'll lift up my voice and all that in just a second. But once again, hopefully all is well with everyone. I pray that you guys have had a great day. I'm just coming out the shower, so I'm Asher. I'll try to correct that in a little bit. Alrighty. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of mine heart be acceptable in Yahavah's sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer. And it is in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect today's message. Amen. Hola, mi nombre es Kofi. ¿Cómo está? Bonjour, je m'appelle Kofi. Ça va? Ni hao, namaste. Osayana Kitawaya, Ohio. I see you. Manut, Wagwan, Kamsa, Kamsamida, Aloha, Ciao, Oson, Habarigani, Akuaba, Madaase, Itase, Jumbo, Bimini Kofi, the Raku Katana the Wewe, Boker To, Boker Ta, Grand Risings, greetings, salutations, Bakwata, Barakala Chamihaba, Anai, Kovai, Kheleta, Servants of Christ, Mashalom Chi. Hello, everybody. I am Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servants of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. We appreciate you. Sorry for our late start. Matter of fact, give me a second. Oh, you know what? I have the wrong thing here on YouTube, by the way. Today's supposed to be Q&A. So my fault. We'll do Q&A session today. My bad. I was getting ready to go into something that's going to be, I guess that'll be a Saturday message, possibly. Or maybe a message for this evening. We got Q&A today. And I did not put it in there. Excuse me. So let's change that right now so everybody knows. Q&A session up. We go a little later on Q&A. All right. I apologize. Oops, hold on. And I got to change that too. Yeah. Technology is whooping my tail, boy.
Uncle John, you want coffee? You want some coffee?
Yeah.
What kind you want in it? What kind of flavor you want? Black?
Okay. All right, my bad, y'all. It's Q&A today. So if you're on this platform over here, I apologize. I got the wrong thing, and we'll change that up ASAP. Mine. We'll change it up ASAP. My fault. So today's Q&A session today. Praise God. I'm about to go into something else. But today's Q&A session. So hopefully everybody can see and hear me okay. Finally got some stuff together with our charges and everything. We were able to take care of that. So prayerfully everybody should be able to see and hear me all right. Yes, no, maybe so. Hopefully so. In the meantime, let's go ahead and say shalom to everybody. Peace real quick. And I'll try to get to your question, Veronica, in just a second, if you give me a second. So let's see. But shalom, everybody. How you doing, Brother Keith? Sister Erna, Sister Beth, Danielle, Deborah. Oh, couldn't get on Zoom earlier? Okay, I'm not sure what was going on. I didn't see anybody coming on. Even though we did start getting into prayer and prayer requests, so I might have been on a different page. I might have had my eyes closed at one point. I apologize. Veronica, Prince, Michael, Carla, thank you, Clear. Let's see, Mr. Gentleman, and Christ loves you regardless if you loved him or not. He loved you everything, and hate is nothing. You will always be his child. He will always welcome you. Okay, thank you for that. I think that's something we know already, but I appreciate that. If that's a statement because of how I look in the presentation, or you've heard maybe a piece of something before, I think you're sadly mistaken as far as the thought process, but appreciate you. How you doing, Shamari, Alonzo, Mystic Mark, G, James Napoli, 4, or Napoli 4. How you doing, Sean? Is it Sean Heem Crowd? Let's see. It just made me skip ahead. I apologize. Y-Fat, Hiking Lit, Tyson Melbourne, John Zimmerman, Garrett Peterson, Amari. Thank you for being, and thank y'all for the likes, the share, subscription, hit the notification tab. You're giving gifts, all those great things. Thank you so much. How you doing, Darius? Sister Angela, James, Muffin, Rex Barian, Lion, Lion K777, Toon KS, Aggie Izele, is it? Or Aggie Izale? Not sure how you pronounce it. How you doing, Lalisla, Libby, King Emperor Mel, Double OG, Triple OG, Remisu, and Sam. If I miss anybody on any platform, charges to my head, not to my heart, we appreciate you so very, very much. We can go ahead and get into this word. So today is Q&A session. So any questions, comments, or concerns you have, feel free to let them go, right? I believe today is Thursday. So today is going to be Q&A session. So anything that you guys have, questions, comments, or concerns, once again, feel free to let them be known. And we will be ready to get to them as best we can. Please forgive me for my humanity. I am but a human being, so if I miss anything on multiple platforms that we're using simultaneously, please charge it to my head, not to my heart. If we do have any issues as far as signal anything, you guys let me know. We are in the mountains, and we do deal with stuff as far as the algorithm issues, so feel free to go ahead. If there is something, just let it be known, and we'll do our best to bounce stuff signal-wise and whatever we need to get to you as soon as possible. How you doing, Sister Deborah? How you doing, Elder Anais? Is it Ravishing Rick Free? Respect, Bagwan. How you doing, Noel? How you doing, Oliver? Everybody, we appreciate you. I think Liza, how you doing? Jose, and let's see. I'm on. Okay, all righty. So appreciate you all, Auntie Mary and everybody. Much love and appreciate and respect to everybody. Let's see, Michael, Ken, MK Body Shaper, is it? Thank you everybody on all platforms. Big Roy. If I miss anybody, once again, please forgive me. I appreciate you. We're going to go ahead and say our Bible pledge and jump right in. We already have a question that somebody's brought up. I don't know if the person's still on or not, but we'll already go ahead and get to that question. I guess, you know what, even though the second one wasn't a question, we'll get to that one as well. But any questions, comments, or concerns you guys have, we'll be using all of today and all of tomorrow to go through them. And so, and hopefully we'll get to them as soon as we possibly can. Alrighty. So thank you again. We appreciate you. Thank you for being on any platform that you're joining us in, whether you're doing this live, listening, or watching later on. We very much so appreciate you, and we hope that your day is in fact going well. Thank you for the belated born day wish. By the way, happy belated born day to those who, well, happy born day. Yam yam salam to anybody with born days in October. And happy belated born day, in case we didn't say it yesterday on the live. I know we put it out there on in the Facebook group, but Sister Greta, I believe, her born day was October the 8th, which is yesterday. So happy belated born day to you as well. We had a couple persons who were on the 6th as well, myself and Brother Dennis. We had somebody else who was October the 4th. Please forgive me, I'm forgetting the person's name. I believe it was a sister. We're forgetting the person's name right now. But we had some October 4th born days. So we have a lot of us all over the place. So there's always somebody's born day going on, and we're thankful that we can celebrate them. And we're thankful we can celebrate these feast days. That being said, let's get into the Q&A. Come on. Let's get into this Q&A. So we'll say our Bible pledge. If you're able to If you're able to, put your Bible or your device or your right hand in the air, and you can just repeat after me. This is my Bible. This is my sword, and this will I trust. For Yeshua is Lord. No sword of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible, and this is Yah's word. Hashem Yahavah, Aman. Which is Yahavah Shem. His name is authority. Let it be done unto us. Amen. We touch and agree on that. You may be seated to go back to what you're doing in the presence of the Most High Yah. I believe we also have Sister Renee on as well with us. And anybody who's on, Lottie Diner, everybody, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for being on with us. Alrighty. So, for today, praise Yah. For today, is Q&A. And so whatever questions, comments, concerns are given, whichever way we are led in that. Okay. So we are having signal issues. Hold on one second, y'all. Okay. All right. Excuse me. So, hopefully you guys can see us better over here. You said, so when is racism, white supremacy going to be defeated? To be honest with you, no time soon. When are you going to get away from a system and stop dealing with the system that doesn't care about you enough to deal with the racism, white supremacy? Make sure you live on your own, support your own, take care of your own, and anybody who wants to be part of that, we can make sure that we're separate from it. When we get to that point, then we won't have to worry about it because, yeah, it's not going anywhere because it's what everything's based on. And if you're going to keep continuing to support it, then it's going to continue to thrive because even if you don't like something, it doesn't mean you don't feed it. Right? If that's your way of saying hello, to how are you doing, Staff 0278 Edwards? I appreciate you and I respect you, even if we don't start off with, genuine courtesies that persons would actually give, right? So so once again, if the mindset is because of what I look like or because of what somebody assumes that I'm going to talk about, because of the term kohelet, or what you say in English, pastor, you are automatically assuming that I'm more, even though I respect him, but I'm more, let's say, MLK than I am Nat Turner. You might have came to the wrong place. I'm neither, by the way, because neither follow the actual way that we should do things as a community and society. But I'm more solid than what you think. And you might want to listen long enough to be able to actually see what's going on. But I'm with you. Or if that's just a term of frustration, because we get trolls on. So just in case I'm assuming you're a troll and you're not, frustration can lead us to those places, but it doesn't help us to have actual genuine conversation, or even if it was debate. Right. But that being said, today is Q&A day. Right. And I actually have two other questions that are supposed to come before that. So that's why there was a quick answer, because we have two persons who already asked questions or at least made comments. The first person, and thank you everybody for being on once again. We appreciate you. So the first comment, really, right, if we're going by, and hopefully everybody can hear and see me okay. Can you do a mic check real quick over here, especially over here? I think we're fine. But if we can do a mic check over here one time again, it was saying that we had an unstable connection, so I was just making sure that it looks like I'm gonna have to go back and forth between signals, but we should be fine, at least for the moment. Loud and clear. Thank you, Brother Darius, and welcome. So, how you doing, Money Green? So the first thing that was brought up, somebody said, can somebody tell me why a bunch of Jewish persons are walking around with a lot of basically vegetation, I'm assuming a lot of palm trees and things of that nature? Well, there's a lot. You can look up Nehemiah chapter 8 for more information. Matter of fact, we can do that right now. If we look at Nehemiah chapter 8, we'll see what persons actually were carrying around. Even in being in their own land, in their own city, settled, right? They hadn't done Feast of Tabernacles in a long time when they came back together. Now, we are not Jewish. If you want to use the letter J, which didn't exist at the time that the Bible was written or in the language that this was originally written in, but if you want to use this thing, we would not be Jewish. We would be a Jew. We would be Jew, right? Being a nation, being Negro, not black necessarily, because black is a color, but black also isn't. Certain nations are called black in a name, like Kush and Kemet, slippery blacks, blue black, etc. Right, but we are actually Negro. Negro has become a word that people make synonymous with black, but Negro is actually one of the most ancient West African ways of saying something. And in Spain and in Portugal, they thought of the Negro as being extremely dark, colored individuals who had locks, who wore hoodies, who were on the street corners putting poetry over music, who read the Tanakh or the Torah, right? And were faithful to the word, were faithful to stuff, didn't believe in bisexuality. They were very strict in certain things. That's what the Spanish and the Portuguese and others who would enslave them said that they were, and they said that they were Negro. And they didn't stop calling them Negro until a law was made that you couldn't call them Negro for purposes of taking their land in the 1500s, 1550 actually to be exact. So, so if you're talking about a Jew versus somebody who's Jewish, that's two different things. If you're talking about Ashkenazi, even in the Bible or the Torah or the scroll, the Ashkenazi is somebody who is actually of the people of Japheth, right? Really, Khazarian are as well. Now, if you talk about the Sephardic so-called Jew, then you would actually be more in tune and in line with who we are. And hello, Brother Russell. I'm sorry I still haven't gotten back to you. Feast of Tabernacles is extremely busy time, and we've had some different things going on. So hopefully you are well, and we'll be able to wrap in a little bit with your question. I apologize. Maybe today, even though as soon as we finish the live, we got to make sure persons come in who are coming in, flying in now, and should be getting here or close to here, as close as transportation will get them to here, and then we'll have to go pick them up to bring them over here and get them in their tents and all that stuff. But welcome everybody. All right. So if we go to Nehemiah and we look, we'll see in verse 14, if we start there, right? Nehemiah chapter 8 in general is something great to read in this. And thank y'all for the love and how you doing, Davey Lee, right? And thanks for being part of the community. How you doing, Staff 0278 Edwards, right? So verse 14, you'll see it says, and they found written in the law. And written in the what? Written in the law. Written in the what? Written in the law, right? Which Yahavah had commanded. Some of you say Moshe or Mashach, right? But Moses, Musa, he had commanded Moses that that the children of Yehudasha'al should dwell in booths or tabernacles or tents, right? Temporary dwelling places, booths. That they should dwell in booths, right? And in dwelling in these booths in the feast of the 7th month, which is basically starts the 15th day of our 7th month. All right. In verse 15, and that they should publish and proclaim in all their cities. So they should advertise it like they advertise Christmas and Halloween and all that stuff. They should publish it and proclaim it in their cities. And in Yehudasha'al, Jerusalem, saying, go forth unto the mount. Go to the mountain. We're at the mountain now. And fetch olive branches and pine branches and myrtle branches and palm branches and branches of thick trees to make booths as it is written. So they would have made booths on all sides, and then they would have had the stuff on the top to make sure that it catches the rain and any kind of weather and all that stuff. And then you would have had an opening in the front that you could go ahead and put a curtain or something like that in front of what we would think of as a curtain today. And that was your booth. That was what you sat in, whether you did it on your house, on your property, out in the woods together. The goal is really to always try to get in the wilderness if you can. But however you could do it, you did that. So when you see persons carrying all these things, although they are not necessarily Jew, that is actually a lawful thing that we're supposed to do, which is, make sure that we build the booth, or at least make sure that there's something attached or something there to remind us of when we came out of Israel. We actually told you guys, the children, and we invited you to have your children do it as well, right? So the children made some booths. I won't show you all of them, but they brought them in here so that the dew wouldn't mess them up overnight. So they brought them in our little sanctuary, right? But they have little booths and stuff that they made, different designs. We took some boxes. I told you guys to go by Aldi, Costco, something like that, where they just be having all these boxes. Maybe you have a box or two or something real small, or you want to make one real big, whatever, it's just kind of to imitate what they would do, right? And we have some stuff, you can even see there's a little bit of stuff that just naturally falls on top anyways in certain places on the tent, that we're using for the sanctuary, but little things like that, right? And you would have, here's another one. And you would have had these, right? Here's another one that somebody made, right? And basically imitating it, you would have had something all over the place, and you would have put stuff on the top or whatever. And you would have then, you should see this person put olive bait and stuff like that on here and everything, right? And has a tav all over the place, right? So just little things like that, but we would have done it obviously to be inside of, or at least made sure that we put some branches and things like that to ensure that nothing would get on top, that we were covered, right? And later on, if you recognize as far as culture, once again, whenever people talk about different things as far as so-called theology or so-called religiosity, religion, etc., you'll discover that a lot of times we kind of miss the mark in this, You said it's 2025, so let you know about consciousness. Well, consciousness is a Greek term, and the Greek term of consciousness is not necessarily what we talk about in culture. As far as in our culture, because I'm coming through the prism of our culture. So if your whole thing is, hey, until you deal with racism, white supremacy the way that I want you to deal with it, then yeah, I probably won't deal with it that way because I'm separate from the system. I make it a point to where, as you can see, so like I'm talking about this is just one of many tents that we have stretching out many different lots all over the place where we have come together and gathered together and we live together, right? At least for this season, but the goal is for us to make sure that we continue in this. Like we have land, we're growing food, we travel, we go to different nations, we give out basically a lot of information for free. We also make sure that persons can go to affordable school. We make sure that we teach persons about land development. We make sure we teach persons about actual food, exercise, doing things of that nature, right? So once again, you're not in somebody else's system. Now, if your whole thing is, I want to talk about something that's talking about systemic stuff or whatever, yeah, we know about Willie Lynch stuff. Willie Lynch stuff, before it was called that, was called Deuteronomy 28 verses 15 through 68. We know about who the Negro is versus the African, and whether that matters or not, we shouldn't have FBA, Negro, African, everybody working against each other. We should come together. But if your whole focus is, I need to stop this every time just to make sure that you focus on me, then we're just as bad as the person to separate us. And like Willie Lynch said, we don't even need the so-called white man to come through and do all this stuff because we do it to each other. But if we'd like to actually listen for something relevant that brings us together, feel free. If not, you might want to find somebody that says, I hate everybody, and go there. But that's not what you're going to get here, right? It's just, you came to the wrong place if that's what you're looking for. I'm not saying that there's not some things that obviously we need to deal with, but if you're looking especially within a little bit for everything to be centered and hit all the marks, I don't even know if anybody be able to do that, but you're definitely not going to get it here. And if you're not going to get it here, I appreciate you. You know, you might want to find it somewhere else. But anyways, for the questions that I had already, right? How you doing, Brother Yahavah? Right. So for the question that somebody asked specifically, because today's Q&A day, and I'm gonna be faithful to that and answer the person's question, right? And thank y'all for the love. So in this specific thing, right, that we're talking about, it is very beautiful to have them involved. How you doing, Sister Tamika? How you doing, Minister Akita? Thank you for everything, by the way. I didn't have a chance to reach out to you and everything, but thank you for everything last night. Thank you for being on with us. And so, in all the different things that we're going to talk about today in Q&A, I'm going to keep it to what the questions are. So the person who asked specifically, why did you see the branches and all that? You see the palm branches, all these different things. It's because of how we would do the tabernacles. Now, here's the interesting part about it when you get culturally to Yahavah, Mashachi. When you go to this point of where you're talking about the Messiah, what is it that they put down before, about a week before Passover? And what people call today, even though it's not correct, but what persons will call today, and how you doing, Owls? They'll call it today Palm Sunday, right? What did they put on the ground as Yehoshua was walking up? They put down the palms, and he rode in on the donkey, and that was supposed to be a sign that he was king. But they put down palms. Now, it's interesting if you get that, because if you recognize the reference in Nehemiah chapter 8, you're seeing the palms that are laid down, right, or that are put on top of it, right, the tabernacle, to cover them. Who's supposed to cover us? Our king, right, the royalty, Messiah, right? We're the one we're waiting on, and we do this in expectation of him, while also reminding ourselves of the one who, when we were delivered from Kemet, did so to make sure, like after Passover took us out into the wilderness, and Feast of Tabernacles reminds us of us being freed from Kemet and going through a process of 40 years, making sure that we're free from an oppressive mindset coming from those who had us in bondage, right? Okay, so you continue that down the road, and later on, the Messiah shows up. And what do they throw down in front of him? The same things that were our covering are now the things that we put down. Why? Because the one who is above us now comes in. And so what covers us is what we put down before him, right? That he walks on top of, he covers us. So he's on top, we're at the bottom. He walks in on top of the palms. And remember, his name is not only Yahashua, right? But also Amanava'al, or what many of you call Emmanuel, right? And Emmanuel literally means what? Yahavah with us, or really even more so, Yahavah inside of us, or Yahavah within us being one with him and him being one with us, because he is supposed to be our husband. He is the groom, he is the bridegroom who will come back for his bride. We are the bride, supposed to have oil in our lamps, waiting to receive our husband. He's gone to prepare a place for us. We're preparing ourselves for his return. All right, so we do that, we see that, and so the same thing that's going on now, the palms are there in the Feast of Tabernacles, and Emmanuel, once again, means Elohim with us. It also is another word for tabernacle. For we can also say when we meet together, we tabernacle with one another. So we can also say using the same language usage or word and usage or proper way of looking at the language, the original language. We can look at this as we tabernacle with Yah. So the Feast of Tabernacles is actually the feast of meeting with Yahavah, and he shows up later. And when he shows up later, we all of a sudden go from having the palm branches, the olive branches, the thick branches, the pine branches, all these different things. They go from being on top to now being what he walks upon. We've been waiting for him, and now that we see him coming in his glory, we go ahead and we put these branches down. So the same way that you see persons do for Palm Sunday is actually a very biblical and lawful way of making sure that we actually decree his presence is coming. I'm on. So it's actually a little more deep than what you might have saw. But yeah, that's why you saw so many Jewish persons, even though we are not Jewish, we are Jew, but that's why you saw so many Jewish persons walking around, excuse me, with the vegetation that they had during the Feast of Booths or the Feast of Tabernacles. All right. Second thing that was brought up. Today is Q&A session once again. So thank you for being on. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to let them fly. I will get to them as best as I can. Right. I'm sorry. What is it? To get everything you're talking about? Because listen, wife appearance, he exists the same thing, yo. You're gonna have to help me, Staff Edwards. I know you're trying to interrupt and school me, I guess. Or I'm not sure. I'm not even sure what you're doing. That doesn't. If you can write it correctly, it just says to get everything you're talking about. Because listen, wife appearance, he exists the same thing, yo. I don't know what that means. No offense. You might want to like reword it, okay? And if you can, you might want to be like it seems like it's a little disrespect. If it gets to the point to where it keeps going and going, I'm not really in charge. The moderators might get you, but I might just get you at this point because it's starting to get to a point where it's not even making sense. Can I scroll up to your question? I can, I guess. I had another question that was before, but all right. I might have missed it. I didn't even see it come through. Or you might have to put it again. Russell, I'm sorry. I don't see it. You know, sometimes too, on this platform in particular, they take questions or they take certain words, even if I haven't, because I have never told them what words I do or don't allow. If somebody says something crazy, I just report it. But, you know, sometimes they cut the stuff where I can't see it. So you might see it and I might not. But I don't see it. I don't know if you could put it again, Russell. I apologize. I don't see it. If if one of the moderators sees it and you want to post it for me too, feel free. I just cannot see it. Okay. Where can I find real dictionaries at? Like describe the word world. Google says it says it was a system or a group of people, but now it doesn't. Yeah, so it's tough. This is one of the reasons why I end up, okay, so I'll get back to you. I had somebody mention something. I promise you you're next, okay? Because I had the other person that been taking over, and I'm kind of all over the place, so I apologize. I'm going to get back on track, all right? But it should be quick, so I got it in my head now. All right, thank you, sir. I appreciate your patience with me. All right, so, and thank you, moderators. I see they got you busy over here as usual. But, all right, so back to what we're talking about. So somebody brought up the whole thing as far as Christ and their assumption because they saw somebody who looks like me. They saw I don't even know if my title shows up on this platform, but I guess they saw somebody who looks like me, probably heard a piece of what I've said before, didn't like it, and came on to make it a point that Christ said, Christ loves everybody, and he died for everybody. Basically, he didn't use that term, but he basically coming from that school. He loves everybody, and he doesn't hate. Matter of fact, let me just read it. What did you say? I don't even know if it's still up. I think somebody might have got to it already. Oh, it's still up there. It was Mr. Gentleman, which gentleman I'm always leery of anyways. If you know what a gentleman does to our people, I'm always, yeah. You said as a pastor, a rabbi. Yes, a pastor can be. Pastor in the Bible actually means, it's a word kohelet. Kohelet actually just means assembler, and kodeshem is assembly. So he might preach, he might teach, he might not, but he's a Levite, should be. But the word they use for pasture, right, is closer to, in the language we speak, closer to the pasture, like sheep are going to pastures, and the person who leads them to green pastures, the shepherd. So that's where you get the correlation from. All right. But Mr. Gentleman said, Jesus Christ loves you regardless if you loved him or not. Love is everything and hate is nothing. You will always be his child. He will always welcome you. So let's do this real quick, and then we're going to come over to Brother Russell's question, because if I'm not careful, we're going to leave him in the dust again. Right? So I don't want to do that to our brother. I don't want to tread upon his patience too much. So how about this? Quick question. Where does the Bible ever say that everybody who exists is his child? Just real quick question. Trying to jump. Does the Bible ever say that everybody who exists is his child? And how you doing, Brother Brandon? Right? If I didn't say so, how you doing, Sister Jennifer? How you doing, Brother Cole? If I didn't say so already. Right? The answer is no. How you doing, Dora? The answer is no. Right? How you doing, Esiata? So if the answer is no, how you doing, Sister Carla? If I didn't say so already. So if the answer is no, right, we already have a problem, because your assumption is that everybody who's created is his child. But let's go further. Does the Bible say, right, that Yah loves everybody? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. This is gonna hurt. This is gonna hurt. See, persons come up with this stuff because you just been taught stuff and you believe it just because somebody said it, but you don't study to show thyself approved. And thank you for the repost. Right? Does the Bible say that he loves everybody? Now, obviously, to a certain degree, love means action, Yahavah, action, the actions of the Most High. So are there actions that are set aside for everybody? Does he allow everybody to breathe? Does it rain on the just and the unjust alike? Okay, yes, we get that. But does the Bible say, as far as like relationship, husband-wife relationship, as far as context, right, as far as him being married to the assembly, does the Bible say that he loves everybody? You be careful, see, because persons would just do that. He loves everybody. No. It doesn't say he loves everybody. We know this just because of the relationship between Jacob, Asav, or Jacob and Esau. That's clear as day. We know that because he hates. Now, hate is not anger per se, right? Even though you can be angry, he has righteous indignation. Hate does not mean beat somebody up necessarily, right? Even though he has allowed persons to get that and then some. But hate is talking about like not paying attention to, almost like disregarding completely. That's really truly what hell is. Is if somebody decides they want to disregard the Most High, he will disregard you, and he will put you in a place to where you are separate from him. That place burns eternally. You said no, it says that he loves the world, his world, the very elect. No, so the word world there doesn't even mean that. Somebody actually asked a question about that, right, which we're coming up to. But the word world actually means system, right? Even we as Hebrew Israelites do this weird thing where it's like we change up what stuff is because we want it to be. We don't have to change it up. It actually works perfect the way it is. The word world means system. So when it says for Elohim so loved the cosmos, right? You're talking about the Greek connotation. So when Elohim so loved the cosmos, Kosmos, right? He so loved the cosmos, the system. Whose system? Not the worldly system, but the system he had in place, that he gave his only begotten son, right? The same son that comes to Yahavah, Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6 and 7, right? The child who was born, the son who was given, the government, his system is put upon the son's shoulders, and the son's names will be Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty Elohim, the Everlasting Abba, and the Prince of Shalom, right? So that son has been given to us to bring governance, right? And he literally is the word. The word there is not only zara, which is talking about the seed, and the seed that actually goes into the womb of a woman as well, and it also means word, but then also it's synonymous with another word that means law. So he came as the law, therefore he couldn't lie about the law or go against the law, because to go against the law means that he goes against himself. And he came to set things in order, and he gave up, right? He gave up the ghost, and his blood was so powerful because his bloodline doesn't come from the world. His seed came from the Father, right? Abba, right, of all, etc. He said, It says Israel is world without end. Okay, cool. World without end. Israel is a world without end. So Israel should be what? A system. That's the context. We know who Israel is from Genesis 28, even though he's not even named Israel yet, but we know the dream with Jacob's ladder and everything. And where they see in Bethel, right? Right in Bethel, Genesis 28, by the shot, right? By the shot Kaf, or sorry, by the shot Kaf Chit, right? Genesis 28, we see there the dream. He wakes up, makes a pillar out of what he was sleeping on, and he knows that that's where you're going to be. And this is where, and Israel is where heaven meets earth. Guess what? When we go through the gates, Israelite names on there, where heaven meets earth. You said world is not defined as a system. Pick up your dictionary. So you're telling me to pick up a worldly dictionary based off of Germanic and Gallic and Visigothic principles, where somebody is trying their best to go ahead and do something where I could just study for myself the origin of it, right? For I wrestle not against flesh and blood, which you're trying to do now, but I wrestle against principalities. A principle is actually an original or foundational thing. So if I go back to the foundation, the Avda, or what you call Ivrit, or what you might call Ebre, Avda, or Hebrew, the original Hebrew, if I go back to it, which is the language of all creation, it doesn't say that. And if I go to the Greek connotation, which the French got their stuff from, those who speak Latin got their stuff from, the Germanic persons eventually who learned versions of French and stuff got their stuff from, the stuff that you're telling me to go look up in a dictionary, they're trying their best to go back anyways, and they're messing up some things along the line, right? The connotation you're close to, the denotation is way off because your denotation is coming from another culture, therefore your etymology is off. But to each their own. If you come on here just to tell me why I'm wrong and I'm wrong and I'm wrong, you can keep on doing so. I'm gonna go ahead. I promise you. See, if you notice what I'm saying, this is stuff that I've studied, I've researched, I've learned. I'm not saying stuff just randomly. And you're gonna tell me to pick up a English dictionary, as if English, which isn't even a full language, actually is something that encapsulates everything, including the fact that when you Google something, you know that they're changing stuff all the time to make sure that it matches something different. You said stops with the great swelling of words. That's interesting. You were using great swelling of words. Now you're not able to keep up with the swelling of words. And now you want to go ahead and use ad hominem to go ahead and show that I'm wrong, right? Which is a straw man. And it shows you have Dunning-Kruger effect. Yes, words mean words and they should swell great and we should learn them. And if you're not able to keep up with the words, you're not going to make me feel bad about the fact that now you can't keep up. If you coming on, yeah, and come on. Question. Bring the smoke. Out of love though. But if you come, even if you come and hate, I'm gonna show you love. I'm showing you more respect than you're showing me. But I'm not gonna also have it sitting here where I'm gonna act like you don't know what you're talking about. I'm babbling without any edification. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on, James. Once again, ad hominem doesn't win an argument. In other words, somebody saying your mama or trying to joan or trying to play the dozens on me, it doesn't win an argument. You came on here trying to say why I was wrong, this and that or whatever, and now you can't keep up. If you can't keep up, you don't have to say that I'm bad because you can't keep up. First I was dumb, stupid, slow. Now you can't keep up, and now I'm too fast. You gotta choose a lane, bro. I say that in love. You gotta choose a lane. You came on here thinking you were gonna get me in some foolishness, and now you realizing that I'm not the fool. I can't. No offense, no shade, but you came with that. You came with that energy, right? You came with that energy. Now you can't handle what you gave. I don't know what to tell you, right? Happy feast days to you, But you came with that energy. I'm gonna go ahead and stop because if I go any further, then I'm gonna be guilty probably of what you doing, right? So, anyways. But I forget where. But anyways, the person was arguing the world. But long story short, the person was saying that Christ loves everybody and this and that or whatever. But you have to look at Scripture, right, and see that it doesn't say that Christ loves everybody. It doesn't say Christ died for everybody. He died for those who will do what they're supposed to do with His death, right? He lived for those who will live after Him and carry the cross and live after Him, follow Him. Or if you follow anybody, follow them as they follow Christ. Is Esau the Caucasian man of today? No, Esau is not the matter of fact. If you look up back then, Esau being ruddy doesn't mean that he's rosy cheeked, right? Adam himself is considered to be extremely dark, yet his part of Adamach means he was made out of red, dark, rich, nutrient earth, which means the redder it is, the darker it looks. It starts looking like what we call black, right? But even if you look up terms that it uses in the Bible to talk about Esau, Edom, etc., they are not in so-called Caucasian lands. By the way, not all Caucasians are white either, right? Caucasian, compound word. right? So it's and remember there was Eurasia. And remember, all of us, the further back all of us go, the darker all of us get. All right, okay, I'm done with that part because people trying to take it to another place. How you doing? How you doing, Jay? All right, how you doing? Is it till daybreak? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hot Mike, yeah. How you doing? Aki Yakwata. Please forgive me if I'm not saying it wrong. Right, I'm not sure which dialect you coming from. Um, all right, Brother Russell, you have been patient. Thank you for your patience, by the way. You've been extremely patient with me. All right. So the question that you had brought up, let me scroll back because this time I did see it come through. Let me just scroll back. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. And I think I see Matthew 23 verse 8. Might have to remind me. F shit. What about 603 scoring six and 616? Okay, that you had asked that before as well. Okay. Russell. I'm sorry. Okay. Where can you find dictionaries at? Okay. So dictionaries are difficult thing, number one. First of all, so it's almost, and forgive me, I'm not trying to sound like I'm all that or whatever, but if you'll indulge me for a second. Dictionaries, I it, they're dictionaries. It depends on time, all that stuff or whatever, because different words have been changed over time, right? That being said, not only have words been changed over time, but they're usually changed to benefit whoever's writing the dictionary. If you get what I'm saying, right? So saying I want a dictionary is very difficult. Like, so for example, there's Black's Law Dictionary. If you're into sovereignty, into law, making sure that you're doing things correctly, trying to be private and learn how to be in the public but not of the public, or be in the world but not of the world, etc. Right? So you have to, oh, hey, anybody with the name Lucifer, I already know what time you want anyways. Have a great day. Right? But you get persons who are dealing with all this stuff or whatever, right? And a lot of persons don't catch. They don't really catch, like, define. So even like Black's Law Dictionary, which we would tell everybody, if you're going to be into law, you need to learn Black's Law Dictionary very well. Even in Black's Law Dictionary, you'll discover that there's how many editions now? 23, 24, 25. And you want to try and glean and get as many of them as possible, because even in the law, right, there's certain laws that in the 1930s, especially like with gold and stuff, when they changed everything up, was it 1933, I believe, with the gold standard and all that stuff they started messing with. And when they started in the 14th Amendment, you have lowercase c citizen, which is different than the uppercase c citizen. So if if you want uppercase c citizen mindset stuff, you got to go to laws that benefit them. So dictionaries can be very difficult, right, to even deal with. Nowadays, dictionaries have gotten to the point to where they're kind of hard to deal with, and Google changes stuff based upon who pays them, right? They get paid through advertisement and stuff, right? So based upon who they have, who they get paid with, or paid by, rather, excuse me, and who they work for ultimately. But also too, it's not the same setup. Back in the day, not too long ago, maybe even 10 years ago, 5 to 10 years ago, somewhere in there, you could have went on Google and you could have asked a question, and even if you were willing to, you might have 100,000 different things you could scroll through, right? And look and look and look. So, but nowadays you only get, maybe 5 to 10 sites, and it might tell you that's it, even though they still have all the information you used to be able to get. And they won't let you parse through. That's why libraries used to be great, because you could look for something. As long as you knew how to do the Dewey Decimal System, you can go through a whole different thing and go through all that stuff and be able to find exactly what you needed to get, right? Or find a whole bunch of stuff, whether agree, disagree, whatever. And that's always the best way, is to find different persons speaking about it from different perspectives, and then try to figure out who those persons are who are speaking. When you find that out, you'll usually be able to get a better comprehension, right? If I'm looking for something on racism, right, or on slavery, let's say like I'm listening to slavery, or listening to something about chattel slavery, I could listen to David Duke, I could listen to Farrakhan, I could listen to everybody in between, and I'll find out that there's certain things that all of them agree on, and there's certain things that all of them are defined, and then there's other stuff that I got to do research for. If they mention something, I might have to go through historical documentation to catch up on what they're talking about. But you'd be surprised how much stuff actually starts coming up over and over and over again. Now, it doesn't always mean necessarily it's true or it's a mot. That's why you have to go through it. But as far as a real dictionary, like it's all of them, you always have to go into the mind of anything, right? The five W's and the H: who, what, where, when, why. Who, what, where, when, why, and how, right? You always have to have that in mind in anything, even when you're reading the scrolls, when you're reading Tavar, when you're reading the Bible. You have to always have a mindset that some of this stuff could be, you know, off, or who is it that's telling the story, right? If you ask me, for example, if you ask me about something I disagree with somebody on, the truth is that I'm going to tell you what I got. You might also want to listen to the other side, and you might want to see if there's anybody else who knows anything, and then you might want to do some research for yourself. And you may agree with me 100%, you might not. You might agree really probably more so in the middle. Maybe not, but you want to take in all sides of anything, right? And see what's going on. So as far as, I know this is not necessarily an answer to your question, but as far as like where can I find a true dictionary, like one that's 100% there, one that's like not giving me, you know, one that's I can depend on no matter what. There's almost nothing like that that exists. Things are being written. There's like, you know, but you have to see who's true to themselves. So like when I talk about Israel, for example, I'll tell persons look at Flavius Josephus, see what he's writing, see where he's coming from. There's some stuff that he'll say is off because he doesn't believe Christ is the Messiah, but he'll tell you a whole bunch of stuff about Christ and it's not written in the Bible, right? This is the same man that we learned about Nero and Caligula and Vespasian and all these different wars that happened. We look at his writings. So we trust what he says, but we don't trust what he says about us. And we've been trained not to. Go look at him and see what he's using, and then look at the words that he would use and how they're defined, right? For the time that they were written in, and you'll discover, oh, okay, I can actually see in that time frame how words work. So this is how I kind of go about it. I don't look for the dictionary to be the one to define. I actually look at first, whatever dictionary I'm using, who's responsible for this dictionary? Just like the Bible, right? You go to those hotels and you see a lot of these Gideon Bibles. Those persons are closely related with KKK. So if I read a Gideon Bible, I got to know enough word already to realize that certain things are going to be changed and certain things are going to be provided. Or if I'm reading the Bible in general, the King James Version, let's say 1611, right? Or you want to read an English version, 1590 or 1560. What happened in the 1500s? In the 1500s, you had a slave owner, right, who was a Roman Catholic, who decided that he wanted to become the Pope of the Protestant Church, called King Henry VIII. Then his son, who was a tormentor and took everything that his father did to the next level, and even lied and hid, even in portraits, some of the stuff that his father was doing, and changed them up, tried to be an iconoclast right on the spot, right? So therefore, right, or deal with the, be an iconoclast right on the spot. So he changed stuff up. So if I'm going to get into a 1560 Bible, I got to realize that when it starts talking about slavery in there, those words are not even original. But those who were chattel slave owners, right, they're putting that stuff in there as far as how to treat your slave. But there was no such word even as Slav yet, or if there was, nobody really was taking, or well, that's not true. Sorry. By that point, I'm off. Excuse me. I'm thinking about Israel. At that point, with them, they had Slavs, right? And they started going against the Slavs, and they started enslaving or enslaving them. So this term that you get as far as how they treated the people, right? I have to know that when I'm reading it. Now, if I go into a dictionary, it might not tell me any of that, depending on whose dictionary, right? Especially, but at the time, if I look at the time when they use this term slave or Slav, and they're coming from, and by the way, even making some mistakes because they don't speak English, they're only writing the Bible in English to separate from the Roman Catholic Church. They thought that French, which by the way, English includes a lot of French too, but they thought that French was the best language as far as that was their home language. They thought that Latin was better. They thought that Greek was better because that's what the Romans did, and that's what the Roman Catholic Church still upheld. So if I'm looking at a dictionary from that time, or a Bible from that time, or if I'm looking at a Shakespearean document from that time, so to speak, I'm looking for different things. I'm looking for things that come out of that, right? I'm looking for the things that come out of that, right? That's what they were doing at that time. I had to take all that into consideration. So so there are certain things that I will do, like for example, we talk about all the time, 1834, Roget's thesaurus, or is it Roget's, Roget, please forgive me, I don't know how to pronounce it, but ROGET' thesaurus, right? And if you go in there, you'll see that if you're looking for the term Negro, you'll discover that Negro, black, blackamoor, They'll also use terms like blackie and N-word and stuff like that, but with a hard ER. But then also, you'll get to a point where it says all those words are synonymous with each other, but then it includes something else that we kind of just gloss over. It also says if you're considered to be Negro, you are considered to be made in the image of Elohim, or they would say in the image of God, right? It's right there, right? So if in 1834, when everybody's saying nobody knew who they were enslaving, that's not true, because they literally, and we know this from Christopher Columbus going back to 1491, 1492, and 1493. It's mentioned several times, them also looking for the land of Asherah. You got to know 2nd Esther chapter 13 for that. But them looking for the land of Asherah, looking for us, looking for Negroes, looking for Israelites who had left. They were scraping the bottom of the barrel. They couldn't find any more in Europe. They start now going into the so-called Middle East and Africa, and they get permission to start looking for where they thought they traveled. Christopher Columbus heard they had traveled over to the so-called New World. He went over there, and they even took a Hebrew interpreter with him. And when they went over there, they discovered through the Hebrew interpreter, right? So that means these persons were speaking Hebrew. Through the Hebrew interpreter, they discovered that they made the same weapons, had the same language, had the same belief system as those who were in West Africa. Wait a minute. So those who spoke Hebrew had the same belief systems in West Africa that they had in the Caribbean, in Hispaniola, in excuse me, in Haiti or Haiti, Dominican, Cuba, Florida, even. They would find later on. Yes, right. So I use things like that to help me define. But whenever I'm looking at a dictionary, I'm more so concerned about first who wrote it, why did they wrote it, where did they write it, what did they wrote it in. Just like in the Bible, I'm not concerned about what people are arguing, including what the person was saying today. They were like, no, the word world means this because the Bible says Israel is the world, blah, blah. Yeah, Israel has a system. That's the context. The word world, when they're writing the word world there, they're using a Greek context and a Greek connotation, somewhat even a Greek denotation, even though we don't know the Greek word for it, right? Or, we do if we read the concordance, but I'm just saying a lot of people don't know the word for it. But long story short, the Greek connotation and denotation are telling you whenever I see world in the Bible, I should think system. And if I think system, right, realizing that's what they're going on, and when I research that word, I realize, oh yeah, the furthest documents we have going back all use that same word, system. So if I know that whenever I see the word world, they're talking about system, I have to figure out which world are they talking about. But if they're telling so if Yahavah tells me love not the world, he's not talking about his system, he's talking about the other system. If it says Israel is the world of Yahavah, then that tells me what? That Israel is Yahavah's system, because we deal in it. So I can look at those definitions or those wordings, et cetera, differently than a lot of persons may or may not, because I'm looking at it differently. See the etymology, like, so we've been trained because how we were taught and thrown in school and stuff like that. We were told, hey, and I'm not even saying it's a bad thing, have dictionaries, right? But what I'm saying is we've been taught, go to the dictionary, whatever the dictionary says is okay, right? Now watch this. Watch this, real quick to even show it even a little differently. And I apologize. I think Matthew 23 verse 8 question is up next, and I'll try to get to the other questions. Sarpong, okay, welcome. Thank you for being on with us. Right. So then thank you, Auntie Marion. I see you. How you doing, Nasya? Been coming on for a while from Moscow. We used to have, before they shut down one of our channels, we used to have a lot of persons from Russia. So hopefully one day we can have you guys back on, have you guys start attending some of this stuff. We were trying to get stuff together where we were going to do some WhatsApp and Zoom stuff with you guys. And then they took our last channel down, so we lost a lot of persons. So I'm always excited when we see persons coming on from Russia in the house. Welcome back on. Hopefully I'm saying Nastya. I'm not sure if I'm even saying that correctly, but thank you for being on. I'm probably butchering the name, right? I have to go back into trying to relearn some Russian again. But yeah, so in all these different things that we have going on, right? You have to realize that there's a lot of stuff now. When we're speaking on these things, we have to be more direct. Like, so what was I was about to go into a word to use as an example. So you'll see, okay, so you'll see the word Genesis, right? We just came out of Badashat series. The word is actually Badashat. And if we go by the connotation, which is the characters, the denotation is in beginning. The connotation for Badashat, which is the name, the actual word for Genesis for us, Genesis is Latin and Greek, but what the Latins and Greeks use. But we would use Badashat. If you use Badashat, it's 6 characters. Those 6 characters means Bet, Aleph, Resh, Shin, Yal, Tav. What does that mean? That means the son who comes out the right family, who's one with the Father, becomes our head, being destroyed by being led by Holy Spirit to the Tav, to the cross. That's what the beginning is. The person who begins everything for us because he makes a universal statement. Here's another word. What does universe mean? People will say, oh, the universe is this. The universe is blah, blah. The universe. No, no. Universe. Uni, one, verse. Sentence. Or a spoken sentence. Therefore, the universe is a single spoken sentence. Or you might say a single song sentence or whatever, right? But now verses have become bigger and bigger and bigger. But that's what a verse is, right? So if somebody says the universe and they say Elohim, or a lot of people like to say nowadays, like Monique and others, or like Oprah and others, God is the universe, time out. Your so-called God then is what? A single spoken sentence? So you're saying you speak him? Or is he the one who created the universe when he spoke? Because the universe is a single spoken sentence. Therefore, you got to know the one who spoke the sentence before you start talking about you just worship the creation. And that's where a lot of persons worship water, right? Can I be look? I'm be honest with you. Some people worship water. Some people worship mountains. Some people worship men. Some persons worship women. Some people worship sex. Some people worship money because you like to worship what's created because it's easy for you to comprehend, but not go to the point of being or not even existential necessarily, but just being righteous in your dealings and being able to see Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Be able to see the flesh, the soul, and the spirit. We can't see these things because we only think in one vein. That's why it's hard to talk about eternity with persons, because eternity, you can't think about time only. Time is landmarks in eternity. If I get on the highway and somebody says make the 5th exit, if I make the 5th exit on my right, that doesn't mean that the highway, that's the only thing on the highway. It just means that's where I'm looking for the 5th exit. So if Yah makes a promise, the highway still exists, but he might make a promise that says the promise is on the 5th exit. So if I'm looking for the 5th exit, I shouldn't think that the 5th exit is the end all be all of anything. Or listen to this sentence. Listen to this sentence. Listen to this sentence. Every time I spoke that same sentence, there was past, present, and future. When I said to, I already had said listen. Listen exists in the same sentence. If you say speak a sentence and I say listen to this sentence, listen to this sentence are all there. I had to think about it. I had to speak it. And as I was speaking it, I had to create a past to be in the present and be able to get to the future at the same time. It's hard to talk about this stuff because of how we're defining, how we're looking at it. That's why I always talk about the cultural prism and the context. Yeah, Bible Thumper. Low key making fun of somebody or whatever is not gonna be something that like gets you any kind of credence or anything. But we'll thank you for being on. I guess that was a nice way to try to make fun of me. I guess and maybe I know some people are into self-deprecation. I don't really do the self-deprecating humor as much anymore because words mean words, right? How you doing, Chase? Is it Chase the Chip? If I didn't say so already, please forgive me, right? But you're welcome to stay on if you like. How you doing, Rocklot? How you doing, Tabitha? Thank y'all for the love. Thank you for the appreciation. So when we talk about defining words, persons are missing a whole lot of things. Or for example, if somebody says like any word with a TION on it, this is like, let's go to so-called English. It's not. It's really Latin and Greek and stuff, but still, or Latin specifically. But let's just go here. Whenever you see a word with a TION on it, or a CION, shion, or shun, or tian, really it should be, but we say shun nowadays, right? Motivation, reconciliation, right, etc. Things like that. The TION makes it a noun. So if I'm reading something, a lot of persons might not look at it like that. They have all this theology and everything that comes about it. But if I see a word and it says TION on it, if I know the language and how that came about, somebody has to be talking about a noun, a person, place, a thing, and usually it's a verb that has become a noun. So if somebody is motivated, to motivate is the verb. But if we're talking about motivation, Motivation is when I'm saying this is the result of the verb, this is the person, place, or thing that is manifested, or something that is manifested within those three things, one of those three things, possibly, right? Because of the verb. Motive is the verb. The tion makes it go from a verb to a noun. Because reconciliation, to reconcile, is the verb. Reconcile is the action. Reconciliation is what? Where I've arrived due to the action, right? So we must reconcile. But now, if we want to make sure, we should reconcile verb, do the action correctly, so that we land in proper reconciliation, right? So something like that. That's why etymology, going back to origins of things, are extremely important. Because somebody would tell you, "Oh no, reconciliation," and they'll speak of it like a verb, but you'll miss that if somebody who was writing it in its origin, and writing it correctly, therefore, is writing correctly, then they're not talking about reconciliation as a verb. They're talking about you should have already reconciled before getting to the reconciliation. And shalom, Nicole. Yeah, that's a familiar thing for a lot of us, right? So yes, death and life is in the power of the tongue. That's right. And those that love it. There we go again. That's another one. Death and life, Proverbs 18:21, that comes right before Proverbs 18:22, right? So Proverbs 18:21, death and life, right, is in the power of the tongue. And those that love it, those that act upon it, shall eat the fruit thereof. If you kill something off, hopefully it deserves to be killed off. If not, you could be killing off something with your tongue. But there are some things you need to kill off with your tongue, right? Death and life is in the power of the tongue. Tongue also means language. Tongue also can be synonymous with nation. Death and life is in the power of the tongue that your nation speaks, right? And then you take it to verse 22, right after it. And if you read the verses before it, Proverbs 18:21 is talking about talking to men, talking about husbands, right? But then Proverbs 18:22, right behind it says, and he who finds a wife, means we should be qualified as husbands within your work, who's been given your inheritance already, taught what it is to be a husband since you were born, and you find a wife, somebody who's pre-qualified as a wife already, taught to be a wife since the time she was born. And when you're in your work, when you find, it's a cultural context. When you're in your work and you find a wife, right? You find something, you find a tabah thing. Now, she is not a thing. And it's not even talking about your marriage is a thing. So wait a minute, what does it mean then? Well, we just read Proverbs 18:21, which says what? Death and life is in the power of the tongue, and those that love it will eat the fruit thereof. So if death and life is in the power of the tongue, and those that act upon it will eat the fruit thereof, why does it talk about a wife next? I wonder. It probably talks about the wife next. Why? Because the wife, more than anybody in the husband's life, will speak life or speak death. And so if you find a wife who knows how to speak life or speak death, that is a tabah or a righteous thing. And if you found it, somebody who will do so properly for you, you will obtain favor from the Most High. You see? So that's what I'm saying. All these different things, when we talk about definitions or context or wording or how to use things like, kind of like a thesaurus, or think of things that are synonymous with each other, etc. We have to go through the process of actually learning culture, process, language, tongues, what persons did, etc., etc. If not, we're going to miss it. Right? So we have persons talking all this stuff, and they don't even realize Proverbs 18:21. A lot of people love that verse. Death and life is in the power of the tongue, and those that love it will eat the fruit thereof. A lot of people love Proverbs 18:22. He who finds a wife findeth the tabah thing and obtain the favor from the Lord, and they never put it together. They're right there. They're right there. And we never put them together. They're literally right there. So those verses take on new meaning when you get that. Whole new meaning. Right? Amen. Salah. All right. Next question, I believe, was Matthew chapter 23 and verse 8. So let's go there real quick. Matatayah. Kaf Gaimon at Chit. Matthew chapter 23, verse 8. We're going to read even more than that. Because in context, it'll help us. We're going to go back to verse 1. We might read through verse 9, 10, 11, somewhere in there. Maybe verse 12. Right? Matter of fact, we'll go to verse 13, because it's going to sew it up. Or maybe even we can really read the whole chapter. Let's just go Matthew chapter 23, verse 1. Once you have it, say amen, say I got it, say I'm with you, say I'm listening. I want to make sure we're on this one together. And welcome to everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Happy feast days to you if you're just joining us on any platform. Thankful and grateful to have you on with us. Thank you for being with us. Hopefully you're getting something out of these words. By the way, I put out an announcement yesterday. Some persons were asking me yesterday about it, so I apologize if it was confusing. We will put out, we will have, I forget the time, it's what, 5:15, 5:30, somewhere around there. I think we're supposed to come on virtually on Zoom today and have that, we'll have some fun. That's New York time. I think it's like 5:15. I'll double check it and we'll put it up again. Where we can come on and we'll play like Family Feud and have some fun, right? We got to have enough participants though, so hopefully we get at least, if we can get like 10 of us, obviously that would work really well, but if the more of us we have, the better, because we can have more teams and switch up teams and all that stuff too. So if you'd like to join us later for that, we'll be doing that virtually today. The babies, we're going to shift their stuff around so that they'll be done and out the way so they can be playing while we're doing that. They're going to do Kung Fu early, and then they're going to go to the lake and go swimming again. Praise God. You got it? Alrighty. So, you listening? Praise God. All praises to the Most High. You'll try again? Yeah, it'll be 5:15. It should be the Feast of Tabernacles one. I know we send a whole bunch of Zoom stuff out, but it should be the same one we sent out today. And if not, text me or something or call me, even if I can't answer the call. I can at least start looking to see what's going on. Also, too, when we send the Zoom link out, if you have issues, one of the things that I've done, I have to do this for my son all the time for Shabbat school on Saturdays. If you have to, what we do as well sometimes, or what I offer is like when we send, the reason why I send that big, huge, long scroll out is it has like different ways of calling and stuff. You can try to call through a number if you can't get on Zoom, but also at the top of it, sometimes you might have to just try and put in the actual login code or put in the login code and then put in the access code or whatever they call it. So you might want to try that too, but sometimes it just happens from time to time, and I don't even know if there's really somebody at Zoom probably could tell you better than I don't know why it happens. Sometimes sometimes I can't. Sometimes literally the Zoom session is going on and I get kicked off myself. I'm not sure what's going on, and maybe down the road that means we need to start looking at the next iteration of the technology. Maybe it's going as far as it can. I don't know, but we'll try to take care of it. Yeah. So Matthew chapter 23. We're gonna start at verse 1. Right now, verse 8 is the question. What does that mean? Basically, be not called Rabbi, right? Which is, or Rabbi, or some people say Rabboni, Rabbi, right? But don't be called Rabbi, for one is your master, right? Even Christ, or that word even is in italics. It means that it wasn't actually originally there. So say one is your master, and your master or your teacher is Christ, and all ye are brethren. But what's the context, as we said earlier, right? Because that can be confusing. Because then, therefore, can anybody be taught without a teacher? No, Holy Spirit's my only teacher, but it didn't say listen to the Holy Spirit there, right? We can go a lot of ways with this, and it gets confusing. So, Matthew 23, verse 1. Then spake Yahavah to the multitude, the Messiah speaking, Christ is speaking, and to his disciples, saying, the scribes and Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So those who are scribes, writers and keepers of the word, right? And also can be persons who keep, things like tax collection and stuff like that in order as well. But those who, right? The scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat, right? Pharisees are the leaders. They could be lawyers. They could be persons who lead the community. At this time, particularly, we're even talking about those who are basically, some of them aren't even necessarily Hebrew. Some of them are mixed Greek and Hebrew, which is okay, but they're starting to say we're more in tune with the Greek sensibilities, therefore not about color, because Greeks were also considered to be so-called black persons back then, believe it or not, right? Or a lot of them were, right? Remember, Cleopatra herself is dark-skinned, but she was of Ptolemaic dynasty, Ptolemaic descent. She was Greek. She didn't consider herself to be African, although she learned African language, right? So we have to think different times, not just attach our sensibilities to things. So when you talk about Pharisees here, these Pharisees specifically are trying to appease persons. By now, Herod and his sons have pretty much passed away, but they're trying to appease persons like that, trying to appease the governor of Rome, right? Pontius Pilate, persons like that. They're the centurions that they see, so that they can go ahead and be allowed to have carte blanche because they've sucked up enough to their leadership. But he says these scribes and Pharisees, they sit in Moses' seat. Moses' seat goes back to the law, the persons who are supposed to lead. So the leaders, right, in this particular time frame are out of pocket. Reminds me of another time frame. Oh yeah, the one we live in right now, right, where we have a lot of leaders who are trying their best to give us Greco-Roman sensibilities about the word, but they themselves will not live by the law of Moses. All right, verse 3, all therefore, so all, because of that, all therefore, whatsoever they bid you, anything they bid you, because of the fact that they're trying to play two sides at the same time, all of them, therefore, whatsoever they bid you, whatever they teach you or tell you, bid you observe, that observe and do. Wait a minute. Yeah, if it's righteous, if they sit in the seat of Moses, if they say do this, do that, you're supposed to do it. Wait a minute, you weren't ready for that. But watch this. But here's that but. That means cancel out if something's not right. But do not ye after their works, for they say and do not. So don't follow cats that tell you to do something, but then when you say, well, you're not doing it, they start giving you reasons why they don't have to. Right? Don't listen to persons that tell you law and then they themselves don't follow law. Don't listen to persons that tell you doctrine and then you say, well, I'm doing this, why don't you do it? Don't listen to persons that say give, but they haven't given anything. Right? Don't listen to persons that say tithe, and last time you checked, you ain't never heard of them tithing. Okay. Right? That's what it's that's the context. See, the context is different than where we're coming from. See, so we already see it's slightly different. Verse 4, for they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne. In other words, they be putting all types of weight on you. Do this, do that. If you don't do this, you not this, you not this enough. That's why even when it comes to tithes, offering and stuff, what do I say all the time? What's Pastor Kofi say all the time? Sorry for speaking in third person. What do I say all the time? You'll hear me all the time. Hey, yeah, it's biblical. Tithe, it's biblical. Offering, right? Matter of fact, yeah, double portion is there, but we only supposed to do it once a year. You know, you'll hear me say first fruits, yep, but only once a year. Right? It's biblical, but I don't check after anybody. I don't say, so and so didn't tithe, don't come on the live no more. Right? There's some persons that do that. There's some persons that even have asked me to be like, hey, look, we got a worldwide thing. We could easily hit the market people were giving. You should just make it that if somebody joins, some of you have even when you first joined have talked to me and been like, oh, okay, so do I need to go ahead and give you my account information because you came from places where they did that? No, that's not. That's between you and y'all. If you do what you're supposed to, then do it. If you're not going to do it, but I'm not going to make it to where it's a burden. If you make it a burden, then you make it a burden. But it's not a burden. Yeah, it's wild, but it's true. There's a lot of places. How you doing, Manuel? There's a lot of places that you go where if you're going to join, you got to make sure that you're giving this amount. You got to make sure that they know your account information. They ask to check your stuff. They'll talk to your family once a year. There's places they do that. Right? If you haven't been in a place like that, all praises. But there's a lot of us. If we haven't even been in those places, we definitely heard. I know this for a fact. You know how I first started finding out it was real? I had heard about it, and I was like, no, they should have. They're exaggerating. When I started seeing the big, huge churches, you said you had one come to your house to collect before. I didn't even know they were sending collectors to the door. Right? Dang, that's crazy work right there. Since Shima said they sent somebody to the door, you late. You late, right? pulled out the bag and everything. Had the white gloves on. No, I'm just playing. Right? But he ain't get nothing. Praise you seen it before you came over here? Okay. So, but the way I found out that it was real is all these huge churches was around, right? And I didn't know this was a thing until I wasn't pastoring yet. You know, I was doing a little bit of, I think maybe I got into a place of interim pastor. I'm not even sure if I did that yet. But I was, started to grow. I've been around in churches like that for a little bit. I wasn't raised in church, but, I've been in the church at this point, maybe 10 years or so. And I started to get behind the scenes more. And I realized that Um, there would be persons who couldn't bury family members. I see you, Sister Sheen. Right? They were looking for they're a person that couldn't bury family members, and it was weird because persons would come and ask persons like us that were smaller, or groups like us that were smaller, and there were other groups that were smaller I would ask advice for, or sometimes even some people were in my family and I'd ask them advice and they'd be like, oh yeah, we ask favors about this and that, and I was like, oh, so people be asking favors behind the scenes and stuff. But what's going on with that? Come to find out, a lot of times persons who are part of big huge congregations, I'm not saying every single one, by the way, right? You can find that out for yourself if you want to search. I'm just saying there are persons who are part of huge congregations, and what would happen is they would have their service, and I'm sorry, you come to service, do all this stuff, whatever, but you're supposed to be giving. Let's say somebody gets sick, or somebody is, loses a job, or somebody retires, or somebody's on SSI, but they need help with other things. I would find out that, when the person, for whatever reason, can't tithe or stops tithing, that if the person passed away, they'd have stuff in there like, well, they'd have clauses, right, in their stuff when they join, like, oh, well, this person didn't tithe for the last 6 months, and then in times for the last 6 months, we can't help you to bury him. Now, you guys are making easy, I'm not going to call out any of them per se, but you guys are making, 30 million, 40 million a year. 10,000 for one person ain't gonna cost you nothing. If anything, you could, forgive my language, I'm not trying to be callous, but I'm just saying, you could burn the body, right? And you could save money for yourself if that's what it is. The family can't even afford the 1,500 sometimes that it is, or I don't know what it is nowadays, but the 1,500 it is to burn the body and maybe scatter their ashes or whatever. Could you help with that? And they would go ahead and be like, no, we're not going to help. That was the first time I learned that tithing was that crazy to where if you didn't tithe, they weren't going to take care of you. And I'm talking about persons who tithe, help them build. I'm talking about, I won't get it. Once again, I'm not going to say names of who. Holy Spirit said, keep that to myself right now, because I'll probably get angry talking about it when I found out more about it. But it was somebody who had helped that church, that pastor. When that pastor had 2-3 persons coming, they were one of the persons coming, had tithe and tithe and tithe and tithe and tithe, and that pastor felt bad about it, but they were allowing the leadership, like the trustees and the deacons and others, to be like, well, that's a bad precedent, and if you set precedents like that, then everybody else is going to think it's okay. But it's like, but you making 40 million a year. If anything, you got so much money, you could literally buy a plot of land, turn it into a graveyard. You could make it to where it's underground, and you could literally just take bodies and place them under there. That's biblical, anyways. How is it that we can't take care of our people like that? If you don't have it, that's one thing. Like, we ain't got it like that yet. So if somebody passes away, we'll still do our best to help raise. We have done our best to help raise, eulogize, show up to funerals, do stuff like that. But and I get it, like, person should have insurance and things as well, right? That's cautionary tale. Person should have insurance to make things like that easy for their family. They should. That being said, that was the first time I realized how crazy the tithe thing was. And I promised y'all, I said, look, yeah, your word says the tithe is righteous. That being said, if somebody not tithing, I'm not looking over their shoulder. Just real talk, right? If somebody's not tithing, it's all right. I'm not gonna look over their shoulder. Oh wow, the wind is crazy. Y'all saw that? The wind is crazy today. The wind is cut. The tent trying to come apart. Praise y'all for a sturdy tent. We didn't even put all the stuff on all the joints. I might have to go put all the stuff on the joints, but we'll wait. We'll trust y'all, right? If it becomes fully white on the screen, just pray for it. If it becomes fully white on the screen, just pray for me. Praise y'all. No, but yeah, it's scary. Some of these things that these persons be doing, and some of these things that they'll have these persons go through and make them feel all types of ways about this, and be guilt persons into this and that, and try to make somebody, persons get to a place where they're scared to even show up. Some persons stop showing up to services and stuff because of it. So yeah, that's how crazy that can get, where leadership will start doing things with their flesh. So anyway, back to this verse real quick. Matthew, I'm sorry, you said your previous church, You put your tithes to people in need. They tried to shame you because you only gave in two only gave to the church. Yeah, we in the mountains. Yeah, we careful. Right. Yep. So let's see. Matthew 23. Right. So verse 4. They bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne. They make it hard for you to even just be born to live. Just like today. Why is it that if I want clean water, I gotta buy it? They make it hard to live. Why is it if I want air to circulate in my home, I gotta buy it? Isn't air free? Why is it that if I want to make sure that I breathe better, I gotta pay for somebody to pump oxygen into me? Isn't oxygen something that's readily available? I get it, the workman is worth his hire, but when we get to the point to where we can't afford basic necessities, some states they charge you extra, right, and get mad at you and say it's illegal for you to catch water. Why is it illegal for if water falls? Why is it illegal for me to catch it and put it in my body? Shabbat shalom, Sister Mignon. How you doing, Sep? I've been doing well. I'm so much of a bum that somebody like you has to bum off me to be able to make yourself feel all right by saying weird stuff in the comments. Right? That's how well I'm doing. Right? Hope that shows you're not doing well, though. I hope you do get better. Right? So verse 4, for they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne and lay them on men's shoulders. Right? How you doing, Elijah? Right? They lay them on men's shoulders. But they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. You said most of it is tap water. For real, for this probably is tap water. It just got some nice minerals in it that taste pretty good. That's right. Why do we pay for what y'all gave us free? Verse 5, Matthew 23, verse 5. But all their works they do to be seen of men. Did you catch that? The little bit of work, they don't do what they're supposed to, but the works that they will do are the works that they do to make sure that they're seen by men. Right? They don't do a whole bunch. Right? Right? But the stuff they do, they make sure everybody knows about. I'm not saying it's wrong that somebody would know that you help somebody, but hear what I'm saying. They don't do the stuff that they're telling you and I to do. But the things that they will step up and do, then they want you and I to worship them and bow down to them and say, oh, if it wasn't for him doing that, if it wasn't for her doing that. That's right, the showmanship. I guess I sure did. Anything else? Is that the best you got? My teeth are more jacked than what you see anyway. I'm thankful that they're still in there because I wasn't supposed to have teeth about 15 years ago. Somehow they hung in there. I've been healthy enough to have them, and I'll keep on having them until the last one falls out. Right? But if that's the best that you got, is my teeth are jacked up. That's something they started saying about me in elementary school. I'm not even messing with my teeth now. I actually done realize my lips are chapped. That's actually a better one. Even though I have asthma, but that's a better one. You should have said something about them. My lips are chapped. But anyway, I praise y'all that somebody would bring that up because it reminds me that my teeth ain't even supposed to be in my mouth no more, but they've been around for another 10, 15 years. So all praises to the Most High, and all praises even to those, or to the Most High, for allowing my enemies to be the ones to point out why I should praise him. All right? Okay, now let's keep on going. Right? I don't know why persons be thinking, like I be telling, like, trolls, we getting y'all back, we're growing a number again. Just like bring your game up. Like you doing stuff that if I was like 6, I had already cried to my mama about when I was 4 and 5, and she had told me that I'm handsome and I'm strong and stuff like that. Like I got over that a long time ago. Y'all got to bring it up. Y'all got to bring it up. Turn it up. I appreciate it when y'all give me new stuff. It helps me to be ready for the next one. But y'all just saying stupid stuff, that don't do nothing. All right, work on it. Work on it. All right, love you, but work on it. Okay. So verse 5. But all their works. All their works. Thank you, Sister Erna. We praise y'all. All their works. How you doing, YBG? All their works they do for to be seen of men. They make broad their phylacteries. They make broad their what? They make broad their phylacteries. I think I'm saying that word right. I'll be messing it up sometimes. I'm going to say it one more again. They make broad their phylacteries. If you don't know what phylacteries are, they make broad. It's like a safeguard. It can be it's usually in a place that you guard, like a station. If you've been in the military, like a place that you would serve watch, and you usually get it there. It's almost like a I hate to use this term. I think the term they use in the concordance is like it's like an amulet. It's like a big thing. So, in other words, when they do something, and I think it's not an amulet that you put here. I believe it's an amulet that goes on the forehead, just like they would wear the word literally on their forehead at times. How you doing, Jay Chris? They did that, and so they would have when they gave or when they did certain things. Put it like this: those of you who were into college football, and I guess the pros, some of the pros do this too a little bit now, but they used to have like they have like a turnover chain, right? Or they have a you some kind of chain. It's usually a turnover chain or something. I think it started with the University of Miami and it caught fire. I don't know if they still do it now, but for a while, everybody for some years had to have a chain, and if you made a big play, you got to wear the chain, and you got to go around on the sideline and walk around and beat your chest, and everybody in the stadium would go crazy because you got the chain, right? Taking our culture, of course, and appropriating it. There's another word, by the way, definitions. If we talk about definitions, you want to be inappropriate because appropriate means you have to take something from somebody. You have to take it without permission. You have to then take it apart, then you make sure you label the parts, then you reverse engineer it, then you reverse engineer it and sell it as yourself because you add one thing to it to say that it's yours, and then you do that oftentimes for profit, right? See how words work. Like, you've been told to be appropriate your whole life. That means to be under what somebody took from you and mismanaged and reversed it on you, right? You don't want to be appropriate, you want to be inappropriate. Y'all's love in the world is inappropriate. You see that? Right? Telling the truth in the system. If somebody says George Washington was the first president, you say no. George Washington said he had two presidents before him that were his favorite. That's a lie. But if you put that on the test, you get it wrong. Why? Because that's inappropriate. You did not take what somebody took and lied about, and you're not putting that down on paper. Right? So sometimes the best places to be is to be in places where you're inappropriate. Right? But anyways, the phylacteries, right? That's what it is, like that turnover chain. That turnover chain, right? The phylacteries. The turnover is, but they had like a big amulet. They would put it on their forehead, tie it up, and then whenever they were doing whatever they supposed to get that token for, that phylactery for, then they wanted everybody to see. See, I just tithed. It's like, yeah, so do all of us. You know what I'm saying, right? See, I just made sure I fed the poor. Matter of fact, a lot of us are poor, and we still feed each other. Right, that's what they were. That's so when it says phylacteries, that's what they're talking about. That's how big a show these persons made of it, to where they literally now, just make sure that you see me on TV. Make sure you see me on my station. Make you see me on my channel. Make you sure this and that. I want you to see. I want you to bow down. Right. I want you to tell me how great I am, so that then I can say, oh, you know what? Well, thank you for that. I do a lot, blah blah, and they'll go on a 90-minute thing about themselves. But then in the 91st minute, they will say, but all praises go to the Most High. Right? It's like when these rappers get their awards. First of all, all things go to God, who the head of my life. But I'm thankful to y'all. And y'all let me know that I'm a God. Right? They're just saying they're going through the motions. They're not going to do what they're supposed to do, but they want that phylactery. They want you to give them all that attention. That's what it's saying. Okay? That's the context of that. Amen. See, so back to verse 5. But all their works they do for to be seen of men. They make broad their phylacteries and enlarge the borders of their garments. So the borders of their garments, if you know, right, when you're supposed to, if you're going to make, right, those of you who know how to actually make the set or the seat, or really is the same thing as the fringes. You don't have to have fringes all around the skirt, right? You have fringes on the four corners, right? But these persons would enlarge on purpose the skirts to make sure everybody knew how holy they were, and then they would put the fringes out even bigger for the flare. Okay. At verse 6, and love the uppermost room at feasts. So they want the biggest and baddest room. They want the room. They want if you go to the hotel, what do they call that? You go to the hotel and you get the best suite, the honeymoon suite, the presidential suite, right? The Michael Jackson coming there, and I'm buying the top 6 floors. I'm not saying he's bad because he bought the 6th floor. I'm just saying that's what they want. They want the best presidential suite, the suite that is so sweet, can't nobody afford it except a few people, right? They're always looking for that, right? Now, this isn't a bad thing, except this is your who? Your rabbi, the person who says they're your teacher. That's the context. They love the uppermost rooms at feast and the chief seats in the synagogues. Not just only the uppermost rooms, but when there's time to worship, they love to make sure that they're always up front. Right? You notice that? You go to a service, the pastor or the preacher or whatever is always in the biggest chair, always up front. The person who is the mother of the church, no offense to mothers of the church, but she always going to be where? Front seat, right? The nurse always got to be here. The ushers got to have this and that, right? All of that, it's got to be something to where everybody always gets to show their power, right? Verse 7, and greetings in the markets. They want the best greetings in the markets. If somebody called me Kofi, I don't be like, hey, you know I'm a pastor, right? But that's how they would be. You know, grow up with somebody. Hey, what's up, Mark? What's up, Matthew? What's up, Levi? What's up, Isaiah? No. It's priest Isaiah. Right? I'm not saying if you ain't get your stuff or it's your master's or your doctorate or your PhD and all that you don't deserve, right? But when somebody get to the place to where it's like you can't even say, I remember coming to a church when I was homeless, getting on my feet. I was going to a place, I won't say the name of it. I won't say the name of it, but it's in DC. I was getting myself together and I got it because she dealt with a whole bunch of crazy behavior to get where she got in the government, right? But we were doing this. I was doing a new members class. I was knocking stuff out the park. I was answering questions. They were surprised, and I was almost like low key kind of teaching the class and everything. And everything was cool for like a few days, a few Sundays in a row when they were doing the classes. And then like on the last class or the second to last class, something like that, I went around. I was like, "Oh, okay, thank you so much, sis." And she goes, "It's doctor." Which, by the way, okay, I respect it. But as soon as she said it, my heart kind of was like, oh, this is what it is over here. Or this is what it is with you. From that point on, there was no kind of even attempting to try and have any kind of close brotherly, sisterly relationship. You said, why use the word pastor? Okay, you're back. All right, you ready for this? The word pastor, and it basically is, yes, what everybody knows in English. The word pastor actually comes from the word kohelet. You can look it up. If you look it up in your concordance, right, in Jeremiah chapter 3, I will give you pastors. I will send you pastors after mine own heart. But that's English. Now, the term kohelet actually means assembler, and the term for assembly is quadaschem. So I as an assembler of an assembly, don't mind having that official title. Okay? Yeah, it's actually in the Bible. If you want the English version, or you want to call me kohelet, or if you say you don't like either one of them because somebody told you you're not supposed to like either one of them, hey, but I can just go off of the word in the culture. All right, but that being said, so here we go again. Here's the context, right? They want the greetings in the markets, and they want to be called that of men. They want to be called of men, rabbi, rabbi. It's not that it's a terrible thing to be called rabbi, rabbi, but they want all this not because of the position or the being the teacher, or remember, even master means teacher, right? So he says, don't listen to them, right? Why? But be not ye called rabbi. For one is your master, one is your teacher. And the context of this is who's talking? Christ is talking. So he says all these persons, remember, they're saying he's somebody who's a blasphemer. That's what they brought him on trial for blasphemy, for saying that he was the Messiah. That's what he's on trial for, right? Right? Or he will be on trial for. We're getting close, right? Matthew 27 is going to be when he's on the cross and when people begin to be resurrected that day, right? And Matthew 28 is going to be when he comes back and all heaven and earth all power in heaven and earth is given to them, right? That's the context. So he says, look, man, all these cats that are talking and saying this and trying to say that I'm nothing and saying they're greater. He says, no. If anybody you should listen to, it's me. Right? He says, and ye are all brethren. That's the context, is the religious leaders you're listening to are giving you some craziness and foolishness, and they're trying to make it all about them to the point to where Christ himself is saying, like, yo, these persons literally are so against the Messiah, they're going to take the life of the Messiah. As Romans chapter 9, verses 32 and 33 say, that Christ himself, the Messiah himself, became a stumbling stone of offense. The law showed up wrapped up in flesh, and they couldn't see it, or they didn't want to see it because they wanted to be in charge that bad. So don't worry about calling those persons, especially rabbi, and don't compare them to me or anybody who represents me. Right? Ye are all brothers. And if the rabbi can't treat you like brothers, and if they'll put heavy stuff on you in the law, but they themselves won't live by it, they can't be your brothers. Verse 9. And call no man your father upon the earth. Does this mean that you can't call, does this mean that my son shouldn't call me father? No. It's talking about persons who are not doing what they're supposed to do. My son better call me father. He better call me dad. I am his father. I am his dad. All right. Have a great day, Sister Carla. All right. Thanks for being on. Right? Call no man father except your father which is in heaven. That's the context. It's not you can't call any man father. They're saying these cats out here aren't doing what they're supposed to. They dirty out here and they put more on you. They're provoking their own children, their spiritual children, so to speak, to wrath. They're not really your father. Verse 10, neither be ye called masters. Should we say that nobody's a teacher or marach or more, as some of you say, who are speaking modern Hebrew? Should we not speak to them? Should we not look for a teacher? For one is your master, even Christ. And then once again, does this mean that we shouldn't listen to Holy Spirit? Because Holy Spirit is also known as the teacher. Of course it doesn't. That's the context. Verse 12, and whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased. Right? And he that humbled himself shall be exalted. Remember, the word abased, by the way, is not the same as abide. The word abased means that life will be allowed to humble you. Right? So this is what it's saying. Whosoever exalts himself. By the way, also part of this too means those who call themselves. If you are called, you shouldn't call yourself. You should be called by the Most High. So those who want to tell everybody, I'm the apostle, who called you? And if it was Yah who called you, right, then how did you get there? And there are certain things, even in Levitical priesthood, right, that we should make sure that we are going through a chain of command. That's part of what's going on here. This is not just saying anybody and everybody shouldn't be listened to. Nobody should ever be called your father. Nobody, you should never have a teacher. That's not what this is saying. If that's the case, the many persons who come on here and want to tell me all about myself shouldn't even come on here, because why should I listen to you? You're not my teacher. Right? This person's come on here. You're not my teacher. Why should I call you man? Why should I call you pastor? Why should I listen to you if that's the context? You got it out of context. All right, I'm on. Excellent question. So Matthew 23 verse 8 is in the midst of all that. So it's not just saying call nobody teacher or call nobody rabbi. It's saying them jokers over there who want to be the HNICs, them ends in the HNIC ain't doing what they supposed to do. That's what it's saying. If I can say it the way we would have said it, in the street, basically. That's right. They want the title for the entitled. The title for the entitled. Thank you. That's a great way of saying it. They want a title because they feel entitled. That's it. They don't want a title because they try to do righteousness. They want a title because they feel entitled. How you doing, Rafael? Right, thank you for being on. Right, they want a title because they're entitled. That's it. Am I? Now I know I missed another question. I apologize. I saw a few of them. I got a little excited about that question. Amen. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say hello? 100 days of motivation. If I didn't, shalom. Peace to you. Shabbat shalom. All right. Today's Q&A, though. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Feel free to let them be made known. Feel free to let them be made known. We usually go a little bit longer on these days. I'm going to try to if I can. I think we have somebody who can get the persons who are coming in. We got somebody whose flight should have landed just about now or just a little while ago. And them and their babies are headed over here. They're not going to be able to get a ride all the way up here, though, so we're going to meet them where they get dropped off. So any other questions, comments, or concerns, even if they're not necessarily just on the Bible, obviously we're going to come through a very biblical and kingdom prison. How you doing, Miss Caddy? How you doing, Brother Koba? That's right, most of us looking just for the status. We're praise the Most High. Yeah, amen. They barak me as well. They hit me first. Y'all know, and all the stuff that I have to say, it got to hit me first, right? So if I say stuff or whatever, I promise you, I'm not saying something just to get a rise out of anybody or try to make anybody feel bad or whatever. Legit, I kind of have been hit by a lot of this and been like, ooh, Yeah, I was doing that too. Ooh, I used to say that too. Oh man, you take your lumps and you move on, right? What's today? October the 9th? Yeah, October the 9th, 2025. Post this up. Um, can we? So, okay. So, can we clarify? I think somebody else had a question before you, but I just caught that at the corner of my eye. Can you clarify the word letter in our culture as in a letter of divorce? So, do you want me specifically to talk about a letter of divorce? Or are you saying just talk about a letter, like as in a epistle, right? Like a letter in an envelope? Or are you talking about specifically a letter of divorce? And then the word letter in that, and how if it's got changed. I'm not sure exactly where to go with that one. I want to make sure I answer you correct, Sister Beck. All right, but so on what day did we start the Feast of Tabernacles? We started the Feast of Tabernacles actually on the day, because days actually start in the evening, according to the actual way the calendar works, right? Because the moon is the beginning of the month. The moon is also the beginning of the day. You start your day and your month. The moon month, you start the beginning of your month with the new moon. We did it the 15th day of the 7th month of the Hebrew calendar, which this year starts on October the 6th, and we did it on the evening of October the 6th. So October 6th, from evening through the sunrise is the first day. The 7th, the second day, right, evening to the rising. The 8th, yesterday, evening to the rising, which means the 9th tonight makes day number 4. That's what the question was. What is the difference? Okay. Oh, according to characters in Avda and Badashat, you're talking about, so, but with the, particularly for the word letter, is that what you're saying? Just for the word letter, not necessarily, you're just using letter as divorce as an example, but you want the actual, what does the word letter mean? Because we can go through that, no problem. I just want to make sure I'm answering you correctly. Oh, I'm sorry. Um, Somebody asked me, sorry, hang in there. Um, ah, I got my whiteboard, even though I left it in the rain by accident 2 days, 2 nights in a row. So it's kind of warped. I don't know if it'll work, but I don't have my markers anyways. I'll try to explain. Somebody asked about 603 scoring 6 versus 616. I will answer that first because you've been waiting for a while. Thank you, Holy Spirit. That popped up in my head like, oh my greatness. You've been waiting on that for a minute. Okay, so I come to you, Sister Beck. Next, though, will be Bradley, difference in between Zionist and Christian nationalism, after I answer the question. So I apologize. Hopefully the person's still on who asked about difference between 603 scoring 6 or 666 and 616. All right? Or, I'm sorry, heard about it. So if you haven't heard about it, this is actually one of the best ways to be able to discover the number of a name that's mentioned in Revelation. Right? So if you have not heard this, right, there's obviously 603 scoring 6. And it's not 666. It's not three sixes. I want to make that very clear. There's a lot of different persons who will tell you a lot of different things about this, right? So they'll tell you, oh yeah, 666, that's three sixes. They'll tell you, therefore, since it's three sixes, that's protons, electrons, and neutrons. Problem with that is not only is that not what the Bible's talking about, but another bigger problem, if we be honest, is that there is no such thing as neutrons. If you didn't know that, neutrons is theoretical, right? There's no such thing as a neutron, right? You've never seen one under a microscope. Somebody might have drawn a picture of one, great. There's no such thing as a neutron. That led to neutrinos, where somebody was trying to prove that neutrinos had to be your thing before neutrons, and then that just proved that things can move faster than the speed of light. But it brought up more questions than answers about protons, neutrons, and electrons. The only reason why somebody even believes that there's neutrons is because of a theory. There used to be a theory, right? Part of what Einstein said, and others had said too, which is that all energy has to turn into mass, and all mass has to turn into energy. In other words, nothing new can be created, or nothing old can pass away. Right? Everything has to go into another form. That's what we were taught. Some of you still believe that because that's what you were taught so fervently and so well, or so to speak, in your school. Problem with this is that they used to explode protons. How you doing, Brother Dwayne? They used to blow up protons and electrons, right? If you were not aware of that, they used to literally blow up protons and electrons, right? That's how you got a lot of your bombs that are used today, right? And in blowing up the protons and electrons, right? What they decided to discover, when the protons and electrons exploded, they could not find the energy. The mass no longer existed because they got rid of it, but they could not find the energy. So they kept this kind of quiet for a while because they've been teaching you that there must be protons and electrons, and if they explode, all mass turns into energy, all energy turns into mass. Problem is, though, is that when they couldn't find it, they needed a theory or something because they weren't going to change it, because that means a lot of money that they're making off of certain teachings go away, right? Certain societies even go away. So eventually, some young cats that were Italian, ages 15 to 25, 5 of them, I believe, came together and came up with a theory, or ages 16 to 25, something like that. They came together and came up with a theory where there was a neutral space. What if the protons can't be found because not because they're not in the negative, but they're in a neutral space? What if the neutrons can't be found not because they're in the positive, but because they're in a neutral space? That's why you believe there's neutrons, right? So therefore, there really is no such thing, right, as a neutron. It's totally 100%. It's totally 100% a fallacy. Right? 100% a fallacy. Right? It's a theory. There's never been a such thing. Never been such thing as a neutron, right? So I wanted to put that out there because, you know, a lot of us, including our Afrocentric brethren, they will be quick, and our Moorish brethren too, will be very quick to tell you why, 666 is actually protons, neutrons, electrons, and persons are trying to be there. So nobody's been able to validate this theory of a proton, so you can't get 6 protons, 6 electrons, 6 neutrons. There's no such thing as a neutron. They teach you that in school, but it's a falsehood, right? And we want to make sure we teach you truth here as much as it's humanly possible. And I believe it's very humanly possible to tell somebody the truth. So we try our best to make sure that we're constantly telling you the truth, okay? So that being said, then, if we're saying that, if we're stating that being said, okay, well then, Pastor Kofi, I see what you're talking about to a certain degree, right? Well then, question for you, right? What's going on with the 666 thing you're talking about and all that? Okay, well, 666 is not 3 sixes. It is a number of a name. Every name has a number in it in many different cultures, including Hebrew culture, because in our culture, every character we use to write out a word, we don't use letters, but we use characters. Every character to write out a word is considered to be have a numerical value. So Aleph, which is the first character where you get the letter A in the alphabet in Greek, right? Before there was alpha in Greek, or A in the Greek the version of Greek you still speak, it was Aleph, or what you call Aleph in modern Hebrew. Aleph has a numerical value of 1, right? The first 10 characters in our culture have a value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Characters 10 through 19 go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. And then the last 4 characters are 100, 200, 300, 400. We utilize these to be able to help us, right, in numerical value. But also every single character has a meaning and has a number value attached. Every single character has what? Has a meaning and has numerical value attached. Every single character, once again, has a meaning and has numerical value attached. Okay? All right. So, in these different things that we just talked about with that, all of them having what again? A meaning and numerical value attached. That means that therefore every single time we look at a character, or every time we have a word, there's also a number. So if somebody has a name, then there is a number to every name. You catch that? There is a number to every name. Hallelujah. There is a what? There is a number to every name. So every name that's in the word has a number attached to it. Okay. Right? Very important to catch. Right? And how you doing, Starlight Thrill? Thanks for being part of the community. So every number has every name, or every word even, every character has a number attached. You cannot say a word without a number being attached. So we can always put a numerical value, right? So numerology for us is in fact not some kind of weird esoteric to astrologic, even though astrological things are not necessarily wrong. It's when you start worshiping the stuff and trying to change it into so-called gods and stuff, that's when you have a problem. But looking at the stars, all this stuff is not problematic for us. Numerology is not problematic for us. So every name has a number attached. Okay, right? So, for example, my actual Hebrew name, Kofi is the Negro or in West African version of it, of a dialect, right? But mine would actually be Kofi. If you were to take that, Kof is 100, Vav is 6, and Ayin is 70. So if you put that together, the numerical value of my name, at least the first part of my name, right? Kofi, right? The numerical value of my name is actually 176. So if somebody were to say there's a number of my name, the numerical value of my name is 176, and then we can go into all different types of probabilities and numerical mathematical conversation that happens with 176. We can talk about prime numbers, we can talk about the year 176, you can start having different conversations about these things, which actually will show even a lot more. And a lot of persons do that. How you doing, Elder Tamara? Hopefully you're feeling better. Glad to see your name pop up. Hopefully you got some sleep too. So the numerical value is important. It's part of our culture. A lot of persons just don't know it and aren't aware of it. But it's very important for us to have the numerical value, the number of a name. Matter of fact, the Bible even declares that in Revelation chapter 2, for the fourth assembly, I believe it's the assembly of Thyatira, where it says that if we get ourselves together when we repent, we'll be given a new name that will be written on a bright stone, or as your Bibles, in English would say, a white stone. And when they write it on the stone, that was a normal way that we would learn. When we learned our culture, when we grew up, we were supposed to have the alphabet put before us when we were younger, and it would have a bunch of stones. And we would take the stones and we would learn the alphabet, right? So we would learn Aleph, Bet, Gimel, and then they would mix them up. And they say, okay, what's that? And you say, Dalet. Great work, little Kofi. What's that one? Kof. Oh, great work. That's the beginning of Kovai. That's the beginning of your name. We would learn like that, right? And Elder Ahmed does a great work with our children. Shabbat school, they learn like that. So they learn their alphabet constantly and consistently. They learn the numbers attached, the meaning to each one, even Psalm 119. As Elder Tamara put in there, Psalm 119, go through there. You'll see that there's 176 verses, which, by the way, Kovai, right? Kovai has 176 verses. Kovai, 176 verses. I'm very big on the Hebrew characters, right? Didn't even put two and two together until recently that, like 176 verses. But if you go to, we do have a school that we do as well through Patreon and stuff as well, for sure. And we can talk about that, off wax, or if you want to contact us through, maybe text us at one of the 202 numbers on our, what you call that? Link tree, on our link tree. Or if you see it in the description, depending on which platform you're watching this on, right? But yeah, I never even made the connection until recently. I was like, there's 176. I knew there was 176 verses in Psalm 119, but I was like, the number of my name is 176. I was like, I really like the alphabet. I really like the characters. I really like culture. That makes sense, right? There's a lot of numerical stuff that begins to make sense when you really start to go through. Although technically, when Psalms was written, it was not written with verses, but they literally broke up all of Psalm 119 into 176 verses, right? The reason being, give me a second, I'm sorry, beloved. I have technical difficulties. All right. So the reason they did this, for those who are not aware, there are 22 characters, and they broke up every character into 8 verses, right? So the 22 characters, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Chet, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yad, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Ayin, Pe, Tesade, Kof, Resh, Shin, Tav, right? They broke up all of them into 8 verses per character. So you're supposed to know that Aleph has 8 verses. That's verses 1 through 8. Aleph means father. So if you know that Aleph means the father, or ox, or strength, or cultivation, or source, then you read verses 1 through 8 different than everybody else does. right? Then verses 9 through 16, bet, right? That means the son, that means family, that means tent, it means house. It can even mean nation or city, right? So son, so bet basically means son who comes out the right house. Once again, try to see if you can, or just text us for the information. Remind us, Sister Raquella will get it to you, or look on, through, just text us, reach out to us at 202 number, and we'll get that information to you, right? But you'll see all those things, right? But there's 176 verses because 22 times 8 is 176. So you can literally figure out what something is if you know what the 22 characters are. Psalm 119 is different. It's actually the beginning for us. It's a beginning thing for us. Once we get those 176 verses down, or those 22 characters down, then that's Psalm 119, the next 15 Psalms, Psalm 120 through 134, are called the Song of Degrees, the Song of Steps. When you learn the characters, then you start getting into those steps. Those steps are like, in my distress, I cried out to Yahavah, and he heard me. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of Yah, right? Now may Israel say, stuff like that, going into places talking about getting out of the system, going all the way through 133, how great it is that brethren come together and dwell together in unity. Those are steps that we take once we have first realized our heritage and our culture and consistency with the characters. Right? So when you learn the character of the word, then you start walking, taking the 15 steps in character. Right? So, literally, like a lot of stuff that's going on with all of those things, right? So, even numerical value. But getting back now to 603 score and 6, 666 or 616. Once again, all these being the number of a name. When you know the culture and you know how to put words together, and you can start putting names together, then you start actually realizing these are not like vague little things that you're not supposed to learn. These are things you should know because of your culture and your language that you should have access to. Right? So a lot of us have never had access enough to culture to even begin to figure out what's going on. So somebody says something and we just go, oh, that's weird. Right? But the reality is that if we know our culture, this is not weird at all. Right? It's not weird at all. So if I were to go to Revelation chapter 13, first things first, once again, I have to realize it doesn't say that what's the word I'm looking for? If I were to go there, it does not say that I'm sorry, I'm having a moment. Oh, it doesn't say 666 as in 3 6s. It gives me a number. 603 score and 6. Now here's the question, the rest of the question. In somebody said 603 score and 6 and 616 are the same thing. Right? And in a sense they are. And how you doing? I'm sorry, Yashikar, thank you for, or Yashikar, thank you for being on, appreciate you. Right? And hello, is it Herb or Herb? I'll try to be back on. So, and all these different things that are going on, watch this. So 603 score and 6. Yeah, you're going to get a response that's very easy. And 616 are actually the same while not being the same. What do you mean? 603 score and 6 is Hebrew. 616 is Greek. Same name, right? I don't have my markers. I have my whiteboard. It's like I said, it's kind of trash. I left it out in the rain the last couple nights. If somebody has a dry erase marker, I don't know if I have one. They literally just got me some for my born day, and I got them. I think I got them up in my tent next to where I rest my head. I don't know if I have one that works with me. I don't even know if I have one in the bag. I think I might. Do I have? No, that's not one. If somebody has a dry erase marker, or somebody can bring me one, and somebody can send Solomon over here, and I'll get him to get me one. I can write it out for you. I can write it out for you, but I can't. I don't have. Yeah. Okay. Well, if somebody happens to come across one who's running around and you on the live and you see this, if you have a dry erase marker, I don't even mind if somebody just has a big piece of paper that has a pen, or I can use a pen and just write it on that. As you can see, my board is kind of falling apart now. You can see it's warped now. Been out in the rain. So I brought it inside finally, but it's been abused. It already had been abused before, but it's been really abused. But if somebody has one, or well, I got a pen. I guess I have paper, but I don't know how well it's gonna show up. Just a pen and paper. I kind of do need a marker. I'll try to do this on yellow paper. We'll see if this works. I don't know if it works. It'll be backwards, and because of my setup, I got a really weird setup today. Because of my setup, I can't reverse this. So just know if you're watching on this platform I'm pointing at now, it's going to show up backwards. If you're watching here, I can do a mirror image. Okay, so just know it's going to be backwards. So what's supposed to be right to left is going to show up left to right. Okay, just want to give you that. Make sure that you see that. So it's going to show up backwards, but you can, at some point, if you'd like to take a picture and just reverse the screen on your app, or on your photo app, whatever you use on your phone, Android or iPhone or whatever, just feel free to do that. Okay, but it should show up properly over here. And we'll go on, Andre. I'm sorry if I didn't say so already. How you doing? Keep doing well, sis. Keep pushing. Keep striving. I'm on. All right. Let's see. So Hebrew characters. I'm going to write out two different things for you guys, right? So I'm going to write out a name up top. Is going to be right to left. Here it's going to be backwards, so it's going to show up left to right. But it's supposed to be right to left, okay? So I have, and hopefully you guys can see, because I'm writing on a paper that has a bunch of lines, so I'm not sure how well this is going to show up. I'm going to try my best. Okay, I'm gonna do my best. I'm sorry. I'll try to have my whiteboard ready tomorrow for Q&A. I should have had all this stuff together. I don't. All right, so peak game. This is backwards. Once again, it's gonna show up backwards over here, right? And it's gonna show up right side here. So I'm gonna say it twice. I'm gonna say everything twice. Oh, thank you, sir. Praise y'all. All right, love you. Appreciate you, sir. You all right? Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead, have fun. Thank you. All right. The babies running around for Feast of Tabernacles. They having fun. Thank you to whoever hooked them up. I appreciate you. All right. All right. Cool. I'll make sure I have the stuff together next time. All right, because it's still going to show up backwards, but at least this will be easier for you to see. Because doing it on the back of a paper is going to be, especially on the back of a yellow paper inside of a white tent while the wind is blowing, it's going to be crazy work. All right. Praise y'all. I'm on. Love y'all, SOC. Love your family. Love you, Solomon. Thank you, everybody. All right. So I'm going to try and put it in brown marker. That's the darkest color I have. If the brown marker is not working for you, please let me know. Okay? All right? But it should stand out the best. The brown should stand out the best. If not, we'll try a different color. But it should stand out the best. Well, anyways, I'm just going to have to turn it around and show you guys. So let's see. You guys? Okay. All right. So what we would have is you know what? I'm going to write this a little smaller. Oh, wow. I don't have anything to erase with. I guess I just use the tool. Matter of fact, can you guys tell me, because this might be easier if I just keep it on the table like this. Hold on 1 second. Mess up the setup over here. Let's see. Can you guys, okay, you guys can see. Can you all see? I can't see what you guys see over here right now at the moment. Can you guys see the full board over here? On this platform? On this platform, I know you guys should be all right. On this platform, can you guys see the whole thing? Or at least up? Well, no. You can't? Okay, hold on. Yeah, you should be able to. Oh, or is it too? You're saying it's too. Let me do something. I'm not looking at what you guys are looking at. Hold on. I'm going to do it like that. Okay? You guys should be able to see everything that I'm seeing now. All right? At least for what I need you to see. Okay? All right, but give me a second. I need to write that a little smaller, the way we're going to do it. Okay. All right. So this right here, right? I'm going to write it smaller, but you'll see why in a second. It's easier to do it like this for you to comprehend what's going on. All right? So this, believe it or not, is the number of the name. Right? Navan Kwasar. I'm writing them in the alphabet that you're used to. Right? Navan, N-V-R-N. I'm writing it right to left because that's how the Hebrew is going to go. And the Greek also goes right to left as well. Right? But we'll focus on the Hebrew, but we'll show you why the Greek is important in this, right, when we get this. So Nevel Kwasar, which is where you basically saying Nero, Caesar. So Caesar, Nero, Nero, Caesar. Okay? That's what these two words are. Right? 603 score and 6 and 616. What the 603 score and 6 is the Hebrew, and the 616 is the Greek. If this makes sense, then this should be something that matches in Hebrew and Greek. Well, then how come we get 666 or 603 score and 6, right, in Hebrew, but we get 616 in Greek? We'll go through that in a little bit, right? But let's do this. We'll put a parentheses there so that we can track that. Something's going to happen with this character, right? So we're going to get something interesting that happens with this character. But this is Nevel Kwasar, or Nero Caesar, Caesar Nero. Okay, so these characters that make these sounds would be, sorry, got bugs crawling. First things first would be Navan, or what we call none. We would have here, Vav. Next up here, we would have Resh or Rash. And then we would have another none, right? And we'll put that, even though in Hebrew there's no such thing as punctuation marks and things of that nature, but we'll put that stuff here for today, all right? Then over here we have Kwasar. Kwa is off. Samek makes the sa sound, so we have Samek. And last we have Ra or Lesh sound again, right? A Ra sound, Ra, Lesh at the end. Sorry for my handwriting. Okay. So we have Nevan Kwasar. That's how we would write it in Hebrew. Right? That's where we get the sound from. Navaran Kwasar. Okay. Now here's the deal. After this, remember every character has a name, a number value attached. We got big ants over here trying to bite me. Okay. All right. Not for much today. All right. So Navan Kwasar. All right. Now here is the number value for each character. Nun or Navan is 50. Vav is the number 6. Resh is the number 200. Nun, once again, is the number 50. Right, and we'll put that in parentheses as well, once again. Kof is the number 100. Samek is the number 60. And Vesh is the number 200. So if we add this up into Hebrew, we get 50 plus 6 is 56. 56 plus 200 is 256. 256 plus 50 is 306. 306 plus 100 is 406. 406 plus 60 is 466. And 466 plus 200 gives us 600. 3 score, which means 20 times 3 and 6. The number 666. The number of a name. Now, how do we know that we can put this in Greek as well, Hebrew and Greek? Well, remember, we had this in parentheses. We had this for a reason. You know why? The reason why is due to the fact, right? The reason why we can put this in parentheses and realize that this 50, something's going to happen with this, is because in the Greek, this right here doesn't exist. It is just never or Nero Basar. That's the way they would say it. So they wouldn't have another character here. We have another character in Hebrew. They do not. So in the Greek, if you take 603 score and 6 and just simply subtract it by taking away 50, we end up with 616. This is the Hebrew, and this is, the Greek. That's how we got all that. Okay. If you want to take a screenshot, feel free to take one. I'll leave it up for like another 20, 30 seconds. I know I just said a lot in a little bit of time. But that's how we get there. For the person, please forgive me, I don't recall exactly who asked the question, but that's how we got there. Right? Now there's a lot more to it, obviously. Some of you might not even comprehend what this stuff actually means and all that, how to put it together, but that's how you get 666 and 616. Right? Hebrew, and in the Greek, they wouldn't have that character there, therefore you subtract it, so you still have it. So if somebody says, oh, it's 616, all they're saying is it's the Greek version of the Hebrew. Right? If you say it's 666, it's not 616, all you're saying is it's what the Hebrews would have written, right? But in the Greek, they would subtract it 50. Same thing. Alrighty? I'll leave it up for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. I'm up. All right. Cool. All righty. I'm on. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's how we get that. So if somebody were to say, how do you get 6? Operate. Breathe. Something else was come over here, right? Was it Brother Bradley's question, or did I just answer Brother Bradley's question? Somebody had a second question I was supposed to get to. Oh, difference. Okay. What is the difference, if any, between Zionists and Christian nationalism? Righty. I am doing well myself. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So yeah. So the difference between so-called Zionist Christian nationalism, there's a lot of political stuff that I'm not privy, just because of the sake of time. I wouldn't be able to go through all the stuff, because a Jewish person doesn't necessarily always have Jewish beliefs, number one. So when we say, doesn't mean that you automatically say that somebody believes in Zionism. I want to be careful. But also somebody who's Jewish in their belief system, right? Even if they're not a Jew, somebody who's Jewish in their belief system doesn't necessarily believe in Zionism, the Zionist movement. Believe it or not. So we have to be careful. I want to be very careful. Oh, the letter is coming up next. Yeah, there were two before she said the letter. I caught the letter, one out of my eye. That's what I'm coming to next. Yeah, thank you. So we're doing this. This is question number 2. That at least that I'm catching up on, and then question number 3 I'm catching up on. It's Sister Beck with the letter. I'm on. Thank you, Brother Dwayne, for the reminder. So, yeah, when we're talking about a Jewish person, we got to be very careful, because we just do this whole thing that every Jewish person and every Ashkenazi and every Khazarian is on the craziness. No, that's a a Jewish nation, if you will, right? An Ashkenazi nation, a Khazarian nation, a Jewish nation, right? But it doesn't mean that they are 100% Zionists, right? Just got to make that clear. That does not, right? Just want to make it clear, right? That we have to be careful with that. That not every person in so-called Judaism is in fact a Zionist. And by the way, right now, to me, I'm going to say this different. I will say, politically speaking, every Christian is not a Christian nationalist. I must say that politically speaking, and I must also say that to make it a point to not get in trouble here on social media. If I be honest too, part of that is because of that. They'll take us down. But that being said, you'll get the point of what I'm saying right in a second, in a little bit, right? So, and all these different things that we're talking about today, right? And all these different things that we're talking about today. Yeah, I saw a question. Well, she said it wasn't about how to write a letter of divorce. She wanted to talk about a letter, the word letter, right? Period. She was using letter of divorce as a way of me comprehending exactly what she means. So she doesn't mean a letter that's sent per se. She means like the character or something in a difference between the two. If I'm wrong about this, Sister Beck, please forgive me because I asked her like about 17,000 times to make sure I didn't get far off, right? But I think I'm right about that. I could be wrong, right? Right. I'm not trying to cause any dispersion or anything like that. Just I'm pretty sure that's what she was saying. But yeah. So back to Brother Bradley, just real quick. Um, so the Christian, so the Zionist movement is basically the movement that says not only that the land of Israel belongs to the so-called Israelite, which is really the Israeli, different group than the Israelites who were kicked out of that land, the few Israelites that were left, and the true, and by the way, the few true Palestinians that were left were kicked off as well. So there's very few actual Israelites there. There are some, but there's very few Israelites left in Israel, and there are very few actual Palestinians left in Palestine. So even the war that's going on is not a war between actual Israelites and actual Palestinians. You know, go figure, right? That happens quite a bit, right? Just like the war, when people call the revolutionary war for the United States of America, they say it was a revolutionary war. No, it was a civil war. What you mean it was a civil war? There were Englishmen fighting against Englishmen. Americans, by definition, are copper-colored persons in North America and South America, from the top to the bottom, right? Copper-colored persons who were indigenous to the Americas, the Caribbean included, all that, right? So if somebody says, "Oh no, no, no," they fight to become Americans. You can't fight to become part of a nation that you're not part of, right? You have to become that by being married into it or at least following the stuff or whatever. But if you tell persons, not only are we going to colonize you, but then we're going to, some of the colonies going to break off, or some of the persons who have made a colony there are going to break off, say that they're you, and then basically kick you out of stuff and say you have to give up your culture and become ours, while giving us all your land in the process. That's that's not how nations work, right? That's why United States Corporation is not a real nation. One of the many reasons, right? So we kind of had the same thing that's working there, right? But the Zionist movement is a movement that has a lot that basically allows for the mind and fights for a mindset that anybody who is not an Ashkenazi, mostly some Hazarim, but mostly, if you're not Ashkenazi, you're not going to be able to get it. And the Zionist movement is actually one that's in tune with the CIA, one that's in tune with the Bureau of Investigation that became the FBI, and it's also in tune with NATO and England and places, because a lot of persons forget, before we had a so-called American presence, or before we had a so-called Ashkenazi presence, or before we had all these different things we'll talk about, the first things first is there was a British presence going back to the 1800s. The reason why you even call Israel a place of so-called the Middle East and try to do that whole olive color thing, and yes, I know olives come in many different colors, but we know when you guys say olive, you mean like the greenish, brownish olives, right? That's what you mean, right? And you try to say that those are the original people that are there, right? And the reality is, if you just do a quick search on YouTube, type in pictures or videos of Israel in the 1800s. They actually exist. Don't forget, people took videos in the 1800s. I know persons want to act like nobody did. Like, pictures existed. Remember, they took pictures of persons, before the Civil War, right? So you could take pictures, you could do videos. You might not have been able to put sound to it, but you could take video back in the 1800s. and look up videos of Israel in the 1900s. You will discover that the persons who are there now are not the same persons who will be depicted in those pictures and videos. Okay. And how you doing, Sister May, if I didn't say so already? Right? So in those pictures and videos, you'll see all that, right? Now, that's quick YouTube search. That's not even that hard to do. You'll find really quickly who was there before the 1940s, 50s, 60s jump off, right? You already know who's there, right? Who had to be kicked out. England came through and begins to call it the Middle East. Why? Because England, right, didn't really care where you were, and they just did everything in comparison to where they were, which is how a lot of nations were, right? So England, in all of its colonizing and stuff, they went as far east as Japan, and they came as east as literally, you know, with Great Britain, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, right? So if you were east and they owned you, they said you were east. If you were west, I'm sorry, if you were east, you were far east. If you were like America and other places, you were west. But what happens if you were in the middle of the east and the far east? They just began to call you Middle East. That's why there's a such thing as Middle Eastern. There is no such people as Middle Eastern, just like there's technically no place as Europe. Europa means anything that belongs to Rome. All of that used to be considered to be African and Asiatic, for real, until all of a sudden they started saying there's Eurasia, trying to separate themselves from the African, especially when they started trying to take African lands from nobles who were up there. And then they started saying, well, we're going to cut off from being Asian, we're just going to be Europe. But they're not a continent, because a continent, by definition, is a large landmass completely surrounded by water. Which means if you don't have water on all four sides of your continent, you're not a continent. Okay? So Australia is a continent. Antarctica is a continent, right? You can't count the polar ice caps and all that, because that stuff melts away from time to time. So, you know, that's not really truly a continent. It's not actual land, right? It's near land, but it's not land, right? And then here's the other continents. You ready? As far as above water, the other continents are North America and South America are just America. Large landmass completely surrounded by water. And then you have Africa, Europe, and Asia are all one continent, because they're a large landmass completely surrounded by water. And now if you get deeper into the ocean and deeper into what we're talking about, there's only one continent, because all of the land masses are still connected to the same thing, which means they're all one land mass. They separated during the flood. Or if you don't want to give it, they were one group of lands called Pangea, and then over time they separated again. Right? Okay. So you have to recognize and realize that that's part of the conversation. England was in Israel before all these other colonizers. I mean, outside of, if you're talking about obviously going way back, and if we want to be honest, we got to talk about the Crusades, and then, you know, so Christian presence, Muslim presence, back and forth, and eventually Muslim presence over and over and over again, right? And then eventually, you know, you get to the stuff with England, and then what happens is during World War II, after World War II is won, England starts giving up a bunch of its colonies, not because they're nice, but because they can't afford to keep them. And one of the first colonies to go, right, if I'm not mistaken, even before India, I'm pretty sure even before India, I could be wrong on that, but one of the first colonies to go is Israel, because it's too much money, there's too much fighting, it's too much for them, they're too spread thin, they don't have enough soldiers and stuff anymore due to how many persons they've lost during the war. And so they go ahead and they say, all right, you go ahead and you guys become, you guys can become, or they basically put it on the market, and the first persons to come up for the market price is the Rothschild family, and the Rothschilds come together with an agreement with the Ashkenazi. That's why you had a star. Remember, the so-called Star of David, there's no such thing as the Star of David. Right? Y'all know that, right? Like there's somebody keeps, when somebody wears all that stuff, they talk about there's no such thing as the Star of David. There's a Star of Malach, which is Malachi, which was an actual false king that some Israelites started worshiping. But there's no such thing as an actual, there's no such thing as an actual Star of David. You never find it in scripture. You don't find it in I don't know if you find it in the Talmud. I don't read the Talmud. I don't really study the Talmud. I've studied it enough, but I don't really know. So it might be in there, but the Talmud is false anyways. So that being said, we don't find it in Torah. You won't find it in the Bible. You won't find it in the so-called Apocrypha. You won't find it in Jasher. You don't find. But the Star of David is false. It is the Rothschild symbol, right? So the Rothschilds and the Ashkenazi come together and actually allowed a lot of Ashkenazi brethren of theirs to die off in concentration camps or to be moved and not to be saved when they started trying to remove evidence of what was happening in their concentration camps in the so-called Nazi, even though Nazi is not actually a real thing. Nazi is that's not the name they called themselves. They called themselves SS. At one point, they were SA, right? So, so they basically even allowed some of their people to kind of go down the river because they were like, hey, we're not worried about them. The focus is getting Israel. They bought Israel from England. They worked with the FBI and with what would become, which becomes NATO, which is why NATO still supports a lot of stuff. And the United States gave it its blessing and still has the CIA and other things heavily involved in the process. That's why whenever you see the U.S. move, you're going to see NATO move and you're going to see Israel move. Even if they say that they don't agree, somehow they always agree on how to move. Right? That's because of the contract. Right? We would call that what would we call that? We would call that a treaty. That's in essence what it is. It's a treaty. Now, here's the problem that happens too, is that the Christian nationalists, which it's hard for me to describe this. Like I said, I'm gonna try to do it as much as I can, but I got to be short. Time won't allow me to really go into the politics of it. And to be honest, I'm not necessarily the greatest person at saying all the politics of it. That being said, you must recognize that also too, the United States of America is not a Christian nation. Can I say that again? There is a such thing as Christianity. I am not a Christian. We are not Christian. That being said, the United States government, at least the leaders of it, are not Christians. They never were, and we're supposed to be. If you want to start with George Washington, although he's the 9th president, if you want to start with him as your first one, he is a Mason who is not a Christian, right? The second president, John Adams, was not a Christian. Thomas Jefferson actually changed up the Bible. Not only had versions of slave Bibles, which they tried to act like he didn't, but he wrote something called the Jefferson Bible, which I might have, but I don't think I have with me in this location, which we've been studying it out of on Patreon some. And when you do the research on it, you'll discover that Thomas Jefferson literally rewrote. He took all of the book of Matthew, Mark, I believe all Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, took out anything he thought was not something that he could learn from or something he could utilize. And then he put it in Bible form in 4 different languages. He was intelligent in how he did it, but he put it in Bible form in 4 different languages, in Latin, Greek, English, and French. And then he basically rewrote it and then said, this is how I think you should learn, which is how a lot of Christians do today. But so he did something very Christian-like, but he was actually a Mason. He didn't believe in the Bible. He didn't believe that Christ was the only true living Yah or version of Yah. He didn't believe that Christ was the only one. He changed it up. So these persons were not Christian. Madison was not a Christian. Monroe was not a Christian. John Quincy Adams was not a Christian. Ed Jackson was not a Christian. I don't care what they said from time to time to be able to tell you. No, they were Masons. The last question is for somebody who asked it over here. Oh, you have to pay for it. Well, let me. You know what? I don't have time for that. Okay, we don't have time for all that today. All right. Well, I'll try to see if I can get them on the. I'll try to see if we can get them on the. All right. Just went through a whole bunch of stuff, YouTube. I apologize. Can you guys see me, hear me okay? Yes, no, maybe so? Can you see me? Can you hear me okay? Yes, no, maybe so? Is the signal better? I got you on another signal. Back up. You can hear me? Because I want to make sure we at least end, if we can't, if it's not the last question, I want one of the last questions to be Sister Bex. Okay, you can hear me? Cool, all right. ¿Cómo está, mi hermana Shea? Gracias por tu presencia. Right? Okay, cool. All right, so let's go ahead. I was like, what in the world is going on? All right. Praise Yah that he had us have the mind to make sure that we brought extra Wi-Fi stuff for this. Praise Yah. Okay. Okay, all right. We cooking? Everything's charging still. Uh-oh. Everything's not charging still. What's going on? What's going on? Give me a second. I don't want to lose. We almost was trying to find it. I got y'all back. So okay, all right. Sorry about that. Okay, we're cool. Okay, so where was I at? Zion. Okay, yeah, Zionist movement, Christian national. Okay, George. Yeah, all right. So as far as Christian nationalism is concerned, um, Christian nationalism is people believing that they're in a Christian nation, and persons are trying to make it a Christian nation. But once again, Christianity can be a mixture of whatever you want as long as you sprinkle some Jesus on it. So there are a lot of persons who are basically sprinkling their Jesus on it. Whatever Jesus is to them, whatever that means, they're sprinkling some Jesus on it. They're making it whatever they need it to be, and they're making it what they need it to be as often as they like it to be. So in that sense, that's what Christian nationalism is. But Christian nationalism, even the Christian, right, in that Christianity that's used, what is it used for? It's used for that so-called Confederate flag, really a Confederate jack, right? If you don't know what a jack is, by the way, an American jack is the stars. You got the stars and bars on the American flag. How you doing, Sister Shirley? Y'all on your way over here? Or y'all made it over yet? I know it's almost time for us to make sure somebody come get you, right? Hopefully you guys are safe, right? But so if you use those stars, the stars of the stars and bars are the jack in the corner. If you talk about the Union Jack is talking about the flag of England, right? And when you see the flag in England and you see the whole, you know, X and all that stuff in the corner, that's the jack. That's not the flag. Same thing with the Confederacy. A lot of you don't know that nobody actually waves the Confederate flag anymore. The whole X, white flag with the red X and all that, that is not that's not the flag. That's the jack, right? So literally, they jacked Christianity and use it for chattel slavery and use it for hatred and built the country upon it. And by the way, way more stuff happened with chattel slavery and mistreatment of our people under the American flag and the American jack than ever did the Confederate flag and the Confederate jack, if we just keep it a buck. But I'll leave that there. But Christian nationalism is now what persons are trying to use to take what really was never Christian in the first place and trying to say we'll now use Christianity as a thing to Bible thump our way into doing things against persons however we want, and we'll sprinkle some Jesus on it and manipulate the word to make it whatever we want it to be. Same thing that the Zionists are doing, taking on the opposite end, right? So the Christian is taking the clay and putting romantic values on it to make it what they want it to be. What the Zionist is doing is taking certain Western and pagan values and put same West, but taking pagan values and putting it on the clay and mixing the two together. And both are appropriating. Both are saying one is saying they are Native American, one are trying to say they are Native Israelite, but they are both right in treaty to do this thing and keep walking the same way and do all this stuff together, right? So since that's what's going on, that's what you're talking about. So could we say that they work in tandem? Of course. Could we say that they basically in many ways want the same result? Sure. And so when somebody might even say there is no difference between the two, I give you that to a certain degree. The sound is in and out. I'm sorry. Is the sound out for everybody? I know I just put the sound in a different place too than it was, so I'll scoot it over a little bit. Maybe it'll be right. But oh, you can? Okay. If you like, if you can get her number from the chat, if you can get Sister Shirley's number from the chat, and feel free to text her or whatever if y'all want to go over and pick her up. That would be lovely. That'd be great. Thank you so much. Right. So, but that's what they're doing in all those different things. Right. That's basically what's coming around is that they're thank you. That's where they're you're seeing a lot of this stuff. So basically, in essence, they move together very well. There are slight differences in what they want, but ultimately they can use one another. See, because America is talking about how they are the Christians and the New Testament believers, and the Bible really talks about them, and that's why they have the right to um, to white man's burden, to what's the one I'm really looking for, where they keep saying it's okay to push the agenda across the world, and especially across the country. What is that called? I'm having a moment. Not Doctrine of Discovery, not lost cause. Man, thank you, brother Dwayne. Manifest Destiny. So they use Manifest Destiny, right? To go ahead and say it's okay for them to do what they want. But Israel is something they hold on to because they say, we see, even with us being New Testament Christian nationalists, we believe in Israel, right? That's what they say, even though they're believing in the Israeli, but they don't want to tell you that. But oh yeah, see, we believe in Israel, right? What Israel does is they say we're the greatest world power. We are Israel, even though they're not. The Zionists say this, right? We should be able to remove anybody according to Talmud and all this stuff and do whatever we want in all persons. And you should support us because you believe in Israel, and Israel has in the chain of command is higher than you. They use each other, right, and manipulate each other to be able to get what they want. And they try to get everybody on board with that. And if not, then if they can just outdo you easily without losing enough of their base, a lot of their base, then they say, okay, we'll just off you. What you gonna do about it? So in essence, that's how the two work together. So slight differences, obviously differences in how they came about, differences in who they try to portray themselves to be, but ultimately working towards the same goal. And ultimately, the real thing we should worry about is they both work for the Satan and for the beast and for the Antichrist spirit, the second beast. Am I? Am I? All righty. Last one for today. And thank y'all for waiting for us to get back on here, Sister Beck. So let's go over this Hebrew word for letter, right? Which is really character. We were talking about the Hebrew characters with the Hebrew letters. So not the letters that somebody's writing, but a letter. Now, when somebody calls a word a letter, right? As a matter of fact, we'll even do one better. You don't even have to listen to what I have to say about it. Let's see what the people who use these words have to say about it, and what they even give you in modern definitions. I always find that interesting with this type of conversation. So I'm just going to go into Google and type in etymology. Actually, yeah, definition. Let's do definition first. Definition of letter. Oh wow, I just spilled a bunch of stuff on this. Now it's not acting right. I hope I didn't break it. I might have to turn this off. It keeps doing this. Let me try again. Sorry, give me a second. I'm gonna get it. Definition. Definition of letter. Great. Let me speak it. It won't let me type it. All right. A letter, a character. So a letter is a character, right? If we're not talking about the written kind. Watch this. Even English, when they say a letter, which actually they say can be pronounced letter, right? Letter, as a noun, right, is a character representing one or more of the sounds used in speech, any of the symbols of an alphabet. Now that's the Greek, the alphabet, right? But we would say pretty much the same. How you doing, Uncle T Rock? We would say pretty much the same. I see you, Auntie Marion. Thanks for switching over, right? We would say pretty much the same. A letter, right? A letter. If something is a letter, or it's a character. So maybe somebody would say, well, you should say the same thing. And look, I get what people say. I'm trying to make sure my people understand their culture and can understand their character. That's why I say all the time character, because I want you to know a letter. People don't get it when we say letter, because we don't even think of letter or letter being a character, right? But a letter, right, is in fact a character. Right? Matter of fact, even in U.S. English, as a verb, to be awarded an emblem in the shape of the initial letter of the name of one's high school or college, right? For achievement in sports, right? When you get a letter on, right? If anybody ever played sports, or you ever saw somebody with the letter jacket or the letter jacket, right? And the letter jacket had whatever your school stuff was on there to make sure that everybody could see, and some persons keep that for the rest of their life, right? It's a big deal, but that's a character, right? It's still talking about character, okay? So we're talking about letter even just coming from the English version. They admit in English, letter is character, right? Not just the number, and by the way, it's not just letters. The letter A is a character. The letter B is a character. The letter C is a character. Guess what else is a character? The number 1 is a character. The number 2 is a character. The number 3 is a character. The number 4 is a character. Because even if you say them in different languages, we get the meaning of it. That means that the definition of it does not change. Right? So in Greek, they changed the characters. Somebody who was actually part Hebrew helped them to do this, right? But they came to one of us and got us to go ahead and shift around and switch up. And so the character A simply just gets put on the side, and over time, we start calling it A instead of Aleph or Aleph, right? But it's the character. Remember, the characters of the Aleph Ba'at or the Aleph Bet came before the alphabet. The Hebrew came before the Greek, right? Which means the Hebrew came before your English, right? So letter, even letter, technically. Now we're talking about an envelope. That's different, right? We have a different word for that in Hebrew and in Greek. But even in that, when they call it a letter, guess why they call it a letter? If you're giving somebody a letter, right? If I wrote a letter and sent it to you, when I send you the letter, I'm sending you what? I'm sending you characters, right? So they're basically saying when we send you the letter or the scroll, right, or the epistle, we're sending you what? We're sending you character. You should know the characters that are on here, and therefore know the character of what I'm trying to say. How you doing, Silver the Wordsmith? Right? Now see that? So we're still having the same conversation. If somebody sends a letter, they're sending characters for you to be able to read. You still have to know the character in order to receive the character, or you have to know the letters to receive the letter. Right? So that's real quick, just using English. Didn't even have to go really deep into the Hebrew for that, Sister Beck, but we'll go there. How you doing, Yasser? Right? But we'll go there, right? But you see that just in using, just letting language be what it is and looking it up, even in the dictionary real quick, which I said, for sure, you got to know where stuff comes from and how to utilize it. But that being said, yeah, we could literally, easily find what? The character or the letter. All right. All right. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and go to the Hebrew, though. And we're talking about character, and we're getting away from the letter that's sent, because that's you actually saying, let's look at that word character, right? So let's look at this word that we have for character, which, by the way, still is it's kind of difficult. You're not going to really find the word character in the Bible, in English especially, right? So we're going to do this. We're going to go to Psalm. Well, you know what? Let's do this. How we want to do this?
I see some in the road over here on the corner. Over where I said.
Let's go to Psalm 119. Psalm 119. Talking about character. Right? Psalm 119. Let's go to verse 1. And if you notice in your concordance, right? In your concordance, they have you noticed in your concordance, has anybody ever gone to Strong's Concordance and tried to look up your characters? I'm doing this for real. It's not going to say anything here. I want you to, if you can go to your Strong's Concordance, if you have one, you want to flip open to, if you have one, and you want to check, if you want to click on it real quick, look up Aleph real quick and see what you discover. And it's 11:11, babe. I see you. Thank you. Right. Look up Aleph in your Strong's Concordance. See what you get. Anybody get a definition? It's interesting, right? Why would they hide and all this stuff? Because they say they're telling you the truth. This is where I really want to go. I'm going to try and get to where you are, Sister Beck, but I'm going to sit here just for a second if I can, because you opened up the door. Right? And at first, and I'm going to be honest, I want to go here. I was praying about it. Holy Spirit was like, yeah, you can go, because I can go for days on this part alone. I'm not going to. I'm going to try and keep it brief. Anybody, if you turn in your concordance, or if you click on your concordance on Aleph, at Psalm 119, verse 1, what does it tell you? I'll tell you what it tells you. It tells you absolutely nothing. It has no Strong's definition for it. It has no inflected root or transliteration. It gives you nothing. But maybe this is just, something that's just kind of weird. Maybe it's messed up. Maybe it's a glitch. Let's go to Psalm 119, verse 9. And let's look up, it'll say Beth there, which they would pronounce Bet, but would be Bet or Ba'at. If you click on Bet, what does it say? Absolutely nothing. That's interesting. Why would it say absolutely nothing?